After escaping from Arsenal Gear, Raiden is contacted by a different AI, impersonating the Colonel and Rose. It states that GW was the only AI destroyed, and that the S3 plan's real purpose is to stop society's regression in the digital era from trivial information drowning knowledge and truth.
The AI believes that humanity is too immature to handle the flow of information responsibly, citing Raiden's lack of individuality and reliance on others for direction as an example when he protests the plan. The AI orders Raiden to eliminate Solidus, telling him that refusal will result in the deaths of Rose and Olga's child. After Raiden defeats Solidus, Snake appears after tracking Liquid. Snake and Otacon plan to rescue Olga's child and locate the Patriots, whose details were hidden in the GW virus disk.
Raiden is then reunited with the real Rose. In the epilogue, Otacon and Snake decode Ocelot's disk, which contains data on all 12 members of the Patriots' highest council, the Wiseman's Committee. However, the members have allegedly been dead for 100 years.
Welcome back to the State of the Arc podcast. My name is Mike.
My name is Kaysen.
And we are joined once again by our good friend, Max Derritt. How's it going?
Hello. It's going good, man. I'm very excited to be here for what is bound to be the most profound crossover in video game analysis history.
And how can it not be?
If those of you who are watching are not aware of Max or not seen his videos before, he has made what I believe is, if not the highest viewed, it's up there among the highest viewed Metal Gear Solid 2 analyses on the entirety of YouTube.
Yes.
Very, very popular video, an amazing video, where he breaks down essentially what we're going to be talking about today, which is the conversation between the AI, Colonel, and Rose with Raiden here at the end of the game. So thank you for joining us, Max. We appreciate you. Looking forward to having this conversation.
Me too.
So before we get into any of that, just something I want to mention really quickly. This is our final episode on Metal Gear Solid 2. So we will be moving on to Terranigma as our next game. But keep in mind that there will be a hiatus in between them. So we're not just going to move right into it next week. We need time, Kaysen and I, to prepare for that series. So there will be a few weeks of a break where Wednesday episodes will not be going up. We will still be uploading the Monday episodes, but the Wednesday episodes will be on a little bit of a break as we prepare for that series. However, you can expect to see Never-Ending Story, which is one of our Patreon exclusive episodes that goes live after a time. So next week after this goes up, we will have a Never-Ending Story analysis, and then there will be a break for a couple weeks there as we prepare for Terranigma. So just keep that in mind. Also, there is a vote currently going on for the game that will follow Terranigma, and Final Fantasy IX is in the lead there, but there are other Final Fantasy games up for vote there, Final Fantasy XII and Final Fantasy IV and some others. So if you'd like to participate in that vote, go check out our Patreon. Also, we've received many, I just got to put this to bed right now. We've received many requests to do additional skits in the form that we did at the beginning of this podcast in the codec call. Kaysen and I kind of did a little thing there. Yeah. I just want you guys to understand that that was an exceptional amount of work, and I currently don't have time to do that again. Again, if you appreciate what we do on this show and you think that what we're doing has value to you in your life and the conversations we have as far as advancing the conversation on video games and their value as storytelling, as a storytelling medium, please check out our Patreon and help it so that the two of us can go on to this full time, and then I can do skits like that regularly if we wanted to do that. But as of right now, the time it's just not possible. Okay, let's move into where we left off last week, which was with Snake and Raiden meeting up, and Snake gives Olga's sword, the cyborg ninja sword, to Raiden, and they go fighting together into Arsenal. And I think we had stopped right before, I think Fortune comes in and like talks with Snake,
that's
right? And then Raiden
and
goes
then we
up
have to leave. Yeah, Raiden leaves
to
and
go
Snake stays.
confront Solidus. So why don't we start with you, Kaysen? Did you have any notes on any of that stuff before we get to Solidus?
For that particular part, I don't think so. It's fascinating. Everyone's got swords now. We're starting to fight sword people now, and that's cool. It's like, wow, just as we get a sword, we're fighting sword people. It's fun. It's very good. I like it.
How about you, Max? I know that you just did a big Metal Gear episode on your channel, and you had played through the game again. Is there anything that you wanted to touch on, maybe that we had glossed over during this section of the game?
Well, I would just say the one video that I just did on my channel is primarily centered around the conversation that happens later. But in regards to the whole section with the Tengus and fighting them leading up to Fortune, I would say, we've got to give special shout out to the fact that it birthed one of the most popular, gaming memes ever with the whole fish and mailed thing.
Yes. Yes. This is something that people have brought up, and I think I did. Okay, my only note on this was fish and mailed. Another really cool thing, just a layer of different things Kojima is doing here to sort of mess with you in almost like a fourth wall breaking kind of way throughout this whole section. Of course, we had, as we talked about last time, the Colonel and Rose talking about like, you'll hurt your eyes playing too close to the TV and cut the power right now, like turn the game off, right? It's just a game,
failure.
Just a game, just like usual, these sorts of things. And so you have something similar that happens here where it's giving you like a fake out game over screen.
Oh yes,
right.
Fish and mailed.
Yeah,
that's
and instead of saying mission failed, it says fish and mailed.
Fish and mailed. And if you look closer, a lot of things are spelled weird. It's the craziest like mission failed screen.
Yeah,
there's a lot of weird things going on.
Yeah, and there's something I want to touch on with what all that means here in just a second. But in regards to our conversation last week, in likening this to 2001: A Space Odyssey, where Dave. Or Hal, I should say, is trying to basically do anything he can to stop Dave from shutting him down. This feels kind of similar. It's an AI that is infected and that is like not functioning correctly.
Right.
And not able to get through to Raiden, it starts turning to the player, trying to like mess with you.
That's
so
crazy,
it's trying to trick you almost into thinking that you've gotten a game over or something like that. But that's even the little details there, it's not spelling the words right. There's just things that are weird about it where it can't totally convince you.
Right.
And you're still playing in the little screen in the mission failed or the game over screen.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that aspect of it. We got a great comment here from somebody on YouTube that explains something I did not realize that I thought was really, really cool about this. All right, so I had to insert this part in post here as I'm editing the video because I was struggling to find this comment while we were recording it live. But I finally found it. It's a comment from Sean Blake 2215. And it's essentially going over how he was a little disappointed we didn't talk about the fish and mailed screen and all this stuff. If you get down towards the middle of the comment, he has kind of two things numbered here he wanted to bring up. But number one says, the text and digits on the screen that appear below the photo showing the cause of game over are not random. They reveal specific statistics about the way you're playing in hidden code. I mean, we can go ahead and take a look at some of these screens. I'll put them up. I'm assuming he's talking about this kind of text here. If anybody else out there is knowledgeable about this, because when I looked this up on the Metal Gear Solid 2 wiki and things like that, I didn't see anything about this. So if there's someone out there who understands this code, how to decode it and what it means, please share that in the comments. I would be really interested to understand more about this. Seems really, really cool, though.
The virus may have worked.
It certainly
was
did.
My next point.
It certainly did.
The virus worked, which, once again, it's the unexpected. So Snake shows up. He's the snake in the simulation. And then there's a worm in the code, which was perfect, and this Garden of Eden symbolism of something's going to find its way in and screw everything up is present at multiple layers here.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful. And then I basically don't have anything up until like the end part.
We did get a comment from somebody who was confused and saying like, I don't get why you guys are questioning whether Rose exists or not.
Stop it. I didn't go back through the end. I know.
No. He's questioning that and saying at no point does Raiden question whether Rose is real. And I'm here to show you the dialogue where he actually does.
He does, yeah.
Well, Raiden says, does Rose really exist?
Yes.
He asks this to Snake.
Yeah.
And Snake says, don't be weird.
Don't be weird.
She's
great.
your, and he's about to say girlfriend, and then he gets cut off by Raiden. What if I've never really met her? So he does question this.
Sure,
directly.
are my memories real or not? Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Well, if it wasn't her, then who was that girl I got pregnant?
Oh, well,
Is that real? I mean, again, this is kind of just...
GW is capable
this
of a
just
great many
leans
things.
into the idea that if you interpreted all of this to be a simulation, I think that's totally valid, despite whatever they say in Metal Gear Solid 4 about it. So I just wanted to clarify that he does directly question whether or not he's ever even met this girl.
And if Raiden is questioning it, there's no reason why you maybe also shouldn't be questioning it as well.
Exactly.
Because at this point, you really don't know what is or isn't correct or true about his past.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even with Metal Gear Solid 4, it's important to keep in mind that Metal Gear Solid 4 existed, like, maybe it's just fragments in the mind of Kojima by the time that Metal Gear Solid 2 was being made. So it's okay to think that maybe he had certain intentions in mind regarding the reality or non-reality of Rose or the whole game as a whole at that time. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So now I just took the dialogue down from Solidus when Raiden emerges up on top.
Yeah.
And I took this down. We don't necessarily have to go through it line by line, but at least start there because I think it'll spark some good stuff. So he says, Jack, I've been watching how you fight. It looks like you've remembered the way you used to kill in the old days. Or is it one of the S3 plan's proud achievements? So the S3 plan at this point is revealed to be essentially
to create another perfect soldier, more perfect
experiment, or I guess program.
Yeah,
that is the purpose of it is to have a recruit come through, and on the other side of that training, be another, like to duplicate a soldier on the level of Solid Snake.
Right. Yeah.
And so he's saying, oh, is this a result, your ability to fight like this, a result of that S3 plan, right?
Yeah.
It came as a complete surprise when Ocelot discovered the S3 data from GW. And I put lol on that again.
Did it? Oh, so surprising.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think Ocelot's surprised by anything.
When Ocelot just discovered this S3 plan. There's another one of those,
that's great.
There's no surprise in any of this, right? It's just funny.
But to him, though, to George Sears, he's quite surprising.
Certainly. Not a bad idea.
Sears? This is George
Well,
Sears.
yeah, Solidus is George Sears, yeah. Not a bad idea, though, using fire to fight fire, creating the perfect assassin to retire Solid Snake's brother. I was a little confused as to why he's referring to himself in third person there, but he is referring to himself.
Not Liquid?
Because Liquid's already dead.
Sure.
Now, I don't know whether Solidus could still be referencing him because he knows that Liquid's arm
he knows
is
that.
grafted onto Ocelot.
Right.
But, I don't think Solid Snake is intending to come here to, kill Liquid / Ocelot. That's not his purpose.
Right.
So I believe what he's saying here is that the Patriots set up the S3 plan to assassinate him. So I think he's referring to himself.
Sure. That makes sense.
In that sentence there. S3 stands for Solid Snake Simulation. It's a development program to artificially reproduce Solid Snake, the perfect warrior. The result is a Foxhound commando when Foxhound no longer exists. I liked that because it shows, again, Foxhound doesn't exist at this point.
Right.
So Raiden's arriving here as a Foxhound agent, running a mission on behalf of Foxhound. And when he said this to Snake, and Snake said, but Foxhound is this was disbanded like a long time ago.
What? And Raiden has no clue.
Yeah. So there is no Foxhound. Foxhound doesn't exist, yet we have a Foxhound commando here.
It sounds like a walking contradiction, a real life paradox exists, which is almost the whole concept of trying to create the whole concept of trying to create a super soldier that doesn't follow his own intuitions and only does what he's told. There's actually an inherent paradox. That's why they can't do it. They keep creating these ways. Oh, this perfect soldier. We've got to create him. We're going to create the perfect soldier. Oh, part of being a perfect soldier is like thinking on your feet and making split decisions.
The will to power.
In the moment. Yeah. And it's like, you can't just... He can't, if you want someone to just do what they're told, that's just a robot, right? No, we want a soldier, but also who does everything he's told all the time. Like you're trying to do something that is basically a contradictory paradox, right? And that's what Raiden is kind of like showing up as, is like this paradoxical being. He doesn't exist. He doesn't even know if he exists. This is another thing. He may not know if Rose exists, but also he doesn't know if he even exists, which is like a whole nother layer here. If you don't know what you are, then how can you be sure of anything in your past?
Yeah. Okay. A simulated solid snake shaped by VR regimen. Sound like someone you know, Jack? I'm sorry to see you reduced to one of the Patriots' puppets, but I've made use of you and their plan too. Solid Snake's sudden appearance, your arrival, it was obvious the Patriots were among my ranks. I had to smoke out the agent before the mission entered the final phase. You came in handy as bait. Jack, those days during the Civil War were as real as they come. Every day was absolute, split between life and death. You ran from it, and now you've been led back to war by something less than real.
Oh dear.
Good stuff. I don't really have any more comments on that. But
That's a great line.
Essentially answers a lot of those questions that we've had, leading up to this point.
Yeah.
So now Raiden knows, and Solidus does not believe that there's any reason to keep him alive. I've given you a worthy opponent, at least. And then you end up fighting a bunch of Metal Gear Rays.
This was not easy, by the way.
It's a tough fight.
This is crazy, yeah. And you're just basically just trying to lock on to either the joints of the head and while avoid being hit, and there's tons of them coming at you.
Yeah.
And like if you screw up once, like they get really close.
Yeah.
It's
try fighting them on the extreme difficulty.
Yeah, I don't do that, guys. I don't play games like that. You guys, have some masochism to you, Mike and Max here. I don't do that. I don't mess around with hard mode on basically any game.
So Max, you brought up there the number of Rays that you fight here depends on the difficulty. I think earlier Snake had mentioned there are 25 of them in total. And so on that highest difficulty, you're fighting all 25.
I was going to say, I
on
only
the
ever had to
lower
deal with a few at
difficulties,
once.
you don't fight them all. So you've beaten the game on the extreme difficulty, Max?
Oh, yeah. There's what you can do for each of the Metal Gear games is go for something called the Big Boss rank. And I apparently, it's obviously this is a discussion, but in my opinion, the hardest one to do it for is Metal Gear Solid 2. Get this. For Metal Gear Solid 2, you have to beat the game on extreme, no rations, beat it in 2.5 hours. And when you get to the point where you have to fight the Rays, that fight takes over 10 minutes. And the entire time, it's very likely that you'll only have a sliver of health left because you just got messed up by all the Tengus who you can only use the sword or the M9 against them. Yeah. And so, if you get hit once, you're done. So it's a big pain. But if you don't mind, just to sort of turn things back to the actual story, let me ask you guys a question. Where does this fight take place?
I have thought of this many times. Somehow, it's Arsenal, right? That we're on. What we're on.
On the top
slowly
of Arsenal.
It undergoes this transformation as Raiden undergoes this transformation, and it turns in. And you almost don't really even question it. As it's happening.
You don't realize when it happens.
Upon reflection, it's like, which strut are we on? Are we just on the top? And does the top look like this? Is this what? Like this hexagonal,
so I think the just to clarify that real quick,
that thing
the big
broke,
shell
right?
completely collapsed.
So
and
we're
Arsenal
on
came
Arsenal gear
out of that
because the reason I even bring that up is because it was revealed earlier that Arsenal gear is
the big shell
the thing
is
itself.
Like
so when I say that, I'm saying it's just like the parts, right? But we're just on its top. We're on its head,
right?
On top of it,
on top of the. I don't know what kind of shape you would call that, but it's a little bit.
Because we were inside of it.
It's a little similar to maybe a stealth bomber type shape. like the
Something like
shape of the Arsenal, you know.
Is it the whole
fortress.
thing, or is that just like
I
its
think that's
head?
the whole thing. It's just this giant, like flying, almost blocky kind of shape, right? It's almost triangular.
Right, yeah.
And so they're standing on top of that while they have the conversation with
battlefield,
Ocelot. But before that, when you're actually fighting against the Rays, it has that almost, like you mentioned last week, Tron-like appearance to it.
Totally.
There's like these
Digital.
glassy sort of like layers, almost like stacked on top of each other. And Raiden had climbed up to here on a ladder.
Right. Yeah.
But when he gets to the top, there's
the
no
ladder?
hole in the ground for him to have emerged from.
Right,
There's
I
no
remember that,
ladder
yeah.
anywhere. He's just standing in this very VR-like looking environment. It
Simulation,
looks
yeah.
completely digital and artificial.
Right.
And you
Get
have
this just on top. Sorry to interrupt you,
No,
Mike,
you're
but
good,
just
though.
on top of that, this arena actually is from Metal Gear Solid VR missions,
Oh, it
which
is one
was
of
a
them.
supplementary thing that came on the PS1 between Metal Gear Solid 1 and Metal Gear Solid 2, where you could just play VR missions. And the specific VR mission it's from, it's when you're doing a photo mission where you're taking pictures of either Mei Ling or Naomi. Yeah. So that's just reproduced here. So why is it that when Raiden went up this ladder, he appears in this arena, there's no ladder beneath him, and if you look over the sides of this, what, a hexagon or octagon, you can't see the water beneath you. I mean, you'd think you're on top of Arsenal, but, I mean, it's like more like a void.
Yeah.
Like, what's going on?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And I think that this leads again to the very solid, I think, argument one could make that the whole thing
Right.
is an artificial simulation.
Exactly.
So,
Is that what Max is leaning towards?
well, I guess I should ask you that. What do you think about which parts are real and which parts are not?
So, well, that's a very, very complicated discussion, but I'll just try to focus in on more like where this is right now. I would say that this is sort of the most extreme example of Hideo Kojima trying to break the fourth wall without going too far overboard. I think what he's doing here is he's trying to break down reality as far as he possibly can, as he has been all the way up until this point with like the fish and mailed and turn the game console off right now.
Yeah.
And right now, this is sort of like the apotheosis where, like to use Buddhist terms, he sees beyond the matrix of reality and starts to understand it for what it is. That's why, like at this moment, Solidus is revealing everything to him. And so, yeah, it's sort of that East Asian spiritual influence sort of coming through, and Hideo Kojima is sort of using it as a way to break the fourth wall and be meta and all that. So, yeah, that's the best answer I can give. I have, by the way, if you want a more specific, better articulated answer, I actually have a video dedicated to this very thing on my channel called "The Biggest Unsolved Mystery from Metal Gear Solid," I think it's called. So yeah,
nice.
Go check that out.
Yeah, definitely go give Max's entire channel a watch, but in particular the MGS2 stuff. Because Metal Gear Solid 2 is your favorite game of all time, correct?
All time. Yep.
Yeah. So definitely a lot of passion for that. The other thing too, you could look into this if you're not one of those people who wants to think the Raiden is like plugged in Matrix style somewhere, is laying on some kind of bed or in some kind of capsule and has like a wires plugged into his brain and he's like in the Matrix type of simulation. I mean, the more obvious sort of, I think, pull that you could make here is that he has nanomachines that are clearly being manipulated by the AI throughout. His memories can be manipulated this way. Why not also
his vision,
what he's seeing or his perception, like where he actually is standing?
Yeah.
As another form of the AI just making an attempt to try to stop or manipulate his actions.
That's crazy. I didn't think of that, but that's wild. Yeah.
Like once you have these nanomachines put in place, this AI has so much control over what you see, perceive, remember, do.
Yeah.
You're just opening yourself up to that kind of control, right? So there could be something like that going on here too. Okay, but it's a good fight. It is tough. I did sort of get into a rhythm with it where I eventually figured it out.
As the more of them keep coming, but you just can't stop moving.
Yeah, you got to keep moving.
Even if you're just going back and forth.
It's better to shoot them in the leg first when they sort of open their mouth, quote unquote. And if you shoot into there, it does way more damage than it otherwise would if you were to hit the head. So, if you're taking advantage of that, then you're going to have a lot more success, kill them more quickly. Not have to use quite as much ammo.
Right.
Well, they will actually on extreme. Do they cut you off? I mean, I wouldn't think they do. They keep giving you ammunition, right? It's the only way to win.
Yeah, because it's insane otherwise.
You wouldn't be able to win, but I wondered maybe if they limited that because I didn't beat it on the extreme difficulty, but.
Right, if you run out of ammo just pops up randomly.
But they won't give you rations, I would assume.
Right.
On that difficulty, yeah. So you basically, you got to do it without taking a single hit, which is pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, it's brutal.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so after this, after you defeat that sort of boss section, Olga shows up to help Raiden. She basically arrives to save his life. Raiden has more or less given up. He's just more keep coming. He's holding the Stinger missile launcher and is like, what can I do at this point?
Know,
this is just ridiculous. Too crazy.
Yeah.
And he's about to just allow himself to be stomped.
Right.
Gray Fox style.
Yes.
And then Olga shows up to save him.
Yeah.
Again, she's obligated to do this because if Raiden dies, it would be considered a failure on her part.
Yeah.
What the Patriots sent her to do.
And her son.
Yeah.
Her child would die.
Would be killed.
Yeah.
So she arrives and tries to save him, and then Solidus, mocks her for selling out her troops,
right,
because she treats them like family. She considers them to be family, yet she has sold them out to protect her real family, her real child.
That's selfish gene style, of course.
Exactly.
Yep. But this kind of pairs up with something that's said at the very end of the game, which is Snake saying something like keeping the past alive and moving into the future are the same thing. Could one of you give me that actual quote?
Oh, you're talking about when he's talking to Raiden at the end?
Yeah, here it is. Building the future and keeping the past alive are the same thing.
Yep.
So Olga seems to have betrayed her father's wishes, right? Mm. Because it's like, oh, she isn't doing what her dad wants. She doesn't care about Russia, right? She doesn't want to, she's not into that anymore. But then you learn about her child. And if you look at her father as being the past and her child being the future, that what can she best do to preserve the past, especially embodied in a man who's already dead? The best way to preserve the past is to protect and build the future. Like her child, the idea that she is giving up on everything and throwing everyone under the bus for her own kid, there is a selfish gene reading of that's for sure. But there's also a symbolic aspect of this where she is going to keep Russia alive by preserving the life of the Russian that is her responsibility to build, right? It is her child. This is the future. And you don't just give up the future in order to preserve the past. You have to do both. Preserving the future or building the future is preserving the past. So I find that embodiment within Olga herself. Yeah. And I think that was certainly intentional.
Yeah. I liked how she says, I know I'm going to hell, but at least my child will not be killed, right?
Okay.
So she realizes and feels awful about the fact that she betrayed her men, but she feels that she has to. She has no choice.
Yeah.
So Solidus kind of mocks her for that. And then all the Ray units, as soon as Solidus is about to start using them to take them out, they start malfunctioning and acting very erratically. Mm-hmm. And Ocelot says that the GW is out of control. I'm reading an abnormal impulse cascade throughout the neural network. I can't shut it down. And Solidus says, what happened? And Ocelot says, maybe some kind of virus.
I love Ocelot, man.
Oh, my goodness. The Patriots? I don't know.
I don't know. It's almost like he's laughing.
Finally, Solidus realizes it. Ocelot, what have you been up to? Ocelot says, it's too late. Arsenal's system control is going haywire. It's on an emergency ascent course. So it's going to crash. Solidus
does
then
his Dragon Ball Z thing.
Exactly.
Yes,
I wrote
I
here,
saw
Solidus just massacres the malfunctioning Metal Gears. Like, why even make them?
Right.
If like one dude can just take these things out like
Dude,
this,
and
right?
he just like with a bullet.
P90 bullets.
Headshot, boom, and it's actually really cool.
It's freaking,
I love the scene when he does
dope,
it.
But
It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I guess these super soldiers like Snake and Raiden and Solidus.
No, not Raiden. I've been playing as Raiden the whole game. He can't do that. Only Solidus can do
we
this.
killed, depending on which
Did we headshot
difficulty.
one in one bullet?
I mean, just take them out mass, or en masse in this way.
It's just funny.
It's
the way he did it.
But yeah,
just minimizes
Solidus,
kind of what they even are.
The scene is very cool.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what this note is. I said a few minutes ago, Solidus said there was no use in allowing Raiden to live. Now he says that he still has some use. I think that's because of this immediate sort of change of plans that have happened. Now, Arsenal is useless, totally useless at this point. They can no longer use it for the purposes they were going to use it for, which is revealed here. I'll explain it here briefly.
Yeah.
So Solidus now reveals that he was using Fortune and Vamp and Dead Cell, who he suggested for Ocelot to go like implant the idea for stealing it. So he knew they were going to try to steal it, basically.
Right, yeah.
Solidus was aware Fortune was playing him or screwing him over or betraying him. He implanted that idea into them in the first place. Right. He had Ocelot go make that suggestion. Because the point for Solidus was never the nuke or never like controlling Arsenal at all. Because Arsenal is only useful when you have full land and air support and a complete like, what would you call it? Arsenal of Metal Gear rays to protect it and all of this other stuff that you need. Otherwise, they'll just shoot it out of the sky.
Right, and then that's it.
So his goal was never Arsenal. His goal was GW because GW has the names of the Wiseman council members, has the names of the Patriots themselves, the secret members.
The Wiseman committee.
And he wanted to know their names so that while Fortune and Vamp are flying around fighting against the entire world, he was going to secretly go pick off and assassinate all of these secret Patriot members while they're distracted with them. So that was his plan from the beginning. Now Arsenal's crashing. His plan is ruined. I have need of my son, Jack, again. Hey, son, who I just told I have no more use for and that I can kill you. I might actually
play
have
catch.
some use.
Jackie boy, we've always been friends, you know. Hey, man, I said some things, you said some things, you know.
All that stuff in the war, let's just put it, come on, dust in the wind.
Water under the bridge, man.
Oh, my goodness.
Things have changed.
And it's funny, due to unforeseen circumstances, we are now in a different situation. So my note on this is that seizing Arsenal gear was never the real objective. Okay, so the president was never the real objective. They just wanted a list of names, but also that was never the real plan. Ocelot wanted a simulation for more snakes. And then it's funny the way that each time you think you're doing the thing, oh, this is what the enemy wants, then it's like, oh, that's not what I really wanted. And in this one scene, we get like 3 changes of that multiple times. Like boom, boom, boom. Oh, not this. Okay, not this. Okay, now the thing is this. Now the thing is this. And this is what happened in the freighter or the ship mission at the very beginning on the boat, the tanker mission. Things get really crazy and you start to lose track of what you're even doing and why. And basically you're just doing as you're told and things are unraveling around you. And it's like, oh, he's the bad guy. No, he's not the bad guy. No, he's the bad guy. No, he's not the bad guy. No, he's the bad guy. Now you got to kill him. And we're getting to that point once again where the nuclear bomb is about to go off. And what do you think the moment is?
Chain reaction is about to happen.
And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Once again,
Ocelot.
Ocelot's arm, because finally we're like, oh, it's not Solidus, it's Ocelot. Oh, it's not Ocelot.
It's liquid.
It's liquid. And that's where things get crazy again. And all of a sudden you experience, once again, this explosion of just like, I don't know, I'm kind of ready for anything at this point, right? Like all the possibilities in your mind just exploded. And they jumped the shark again. They did it twice in one game, and it's wild. But this is the second moment, and it's basically almost the same order of events as in the tanker sequence.
Yeah,
and it ends at the same place almost in the same way, with him now getting away. And oh no, we lost him. What are we going to do now?
Right.
It's the same thing.
It is.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. But they did it twice, and it's too ridiculous for most people to do it in a game once. And they did it in the same game twice, almost in the same way.
Not only that, it's also just this many twists in the plot. Yes. Because you have your mastermind villain in Solidus revealing he played the other villains, as in Fortune and Vamp and Dead Cell.
Yeah. But they thought they were playing him.
But then he was being duped by Ocelot.
Yeah.
But then Ocelot is being duped by Liquid. It just keeps going.
It just keeps going.
It's so insane. One thing that I wanted to make sure to mention too is some people brought this up. Why would GW want, if this is all set up, if this is all planned by the Patriots and GW, why would GW want to infect itself with the virus? And so there's some nuance to this. There's some nuance to this. First of all, it didn't. It altered the data so that when Snake and Emma got the virus and uploaded it, it wouldn't actually work.
Right.
But then Ocelot took it back and then actually did infect it. So you're thinking, wait a minute. Why would Ocelot do that if he's working for the Patriots? Well, the Patriots' names, their identities, were in the data that's on GW. So corrupting GW and destroying it keeps the identities of the Patriots a secret.
Especially if they have other AIs. It's like, all right, we'll just get rid of that one.
Exactly. So, yeah, this is not like...
I don't know why people have such trouble with this. I mean, it's so easy to understand.
It's very complex. It's very complex. But that is the reason. The Patriots... real goal here, as is revealed by Ocelot in a minute, is not to recreate a Solid Snake. In fact, let's just read Ocelot's entire thing here.
Because we just learned what S3 even is. And immediately after, it's
actually
like,
not that.
You thought S3 meant, because you told me 5 minutes ago. Yes, but really, it stands for this other thing. Like, oh my goodness, man.
So Fortune had brought Snake in handcuffs up there. She had captured him in their battle below. Solidus and Fortune have a bit of a spat back and forth where he reveals what I just said. I was playing you all along. Then Ocelot cuts in, kind of smirking. What exactly is it that you find so funny? Says Fortune to him. Charades usually are humorous. I thought that was a wonderful line.
Yeah.
Really, really, really good. Really sharp, really witty. So Ocelot reveals here that he was with the Patriots all along, and that his entire mission was a simulation, an orchestrated recreation of Shadow Moses. So Ames and the president's deaths, the ninja, the computer virus that mimics Fox die. Did you really think they were all coincidence?
Did you really think?
Ames' own nanomachines were used to shut down his pacemaker. So that's how he died in that scene. The nanomachines, because they all have nanomachines, and that's how the Patriots and GW control people, right? The nanomachine shut down his pacemaker and his heart stopped. That's why he died. I arranged for the appearance of the ninja as well. So Olga and the cyborg ninja being involved here, Ocelot brought her in to mimic, again, Shadow Moses. As for the president, although Johnson realized what was going on, he played out his allotted part. As for the computer virus, it's a digital counterpart of FoxDie. It was also designed to eliminate every scrap of information regarding the Patriots from GW. Your plan was invalidated even before execution, Solidus. Fat Man was a different story. He's one of our own people, a sort of examiner we hired to test the boy's progress before letting him tackle the exercise proper. We had to arrange for Stillman's presence to coax the maniac into agreeing. If the boy had allowed the big shell to be destroyed, this exercise would have ended there. The project has no room for failures. What do you mean? Given the right situation, the right story, anyone can be shaped into Snake.
Yeah.
Even rookies can fight like men of experience. An instant creation of genius, and this training kernel will provide more than enough data to formulate such a program. You, Dead Cell, Olga, you're all nothing but pawns placed to create the perfect simulation. Solidus, you and the boy were selected because your relationship resembles the one between Snake and Big Boss. Fortune, you and the rest of Dead Cell stand in for the Foxhound squad that Snake took out during Shadow Moses. You're the most impressive collection of freaks outside of Foxhound. We've gone to a lot of trouble to set you up against the boy. That story about purified hydrogen bombs is just the tip of the iceberg. The project was already underway when I sunk the tanker along with your old man 2 years ago. Throwing your husband into the brig was a part of it too. You were told that the eradication of Dead Cell 6 months ago was an act of the Patriots. We provoked and encouraged your hatred, and you opted for vengeance just as we planned. And so she's like, all orchestrated, except for the appearance of the real Solid Snake. I wonder now, who sent for you? So Ocelot is asking that. He has the arm of Liquid. I wonder who arranged for Solid Snake to be here. My theory is Liquid obviously coaxed him into it somehow because Liquid is subtly manipulated Ocelot.
Nice to see you again.
So, yeah. All of our misfortune was just a part of their project. I love this part because, again, it's just so cool. Like the style of the scene. I love the shot where Fortune is raising her weapon to fire on Ocelot, and he just pulls out his revolver and just shoots her, and just bam, and then she just falls. It's
the
so
music
surprising.
like stops. It was very surprising.
Yeah, and then he reveals there was no luck involved. There's no supernatural kind of thing going on here. We gave you the technology, the what'd you call it, electromagnetic sort of technology.
The technology to repel bullets.
Repels all these bullets off of you. We gave you that.
Right.
So
There
I
is
can
no
just
miracle.
shut that off.
Only state-of-the-art technology.
That's
and
what
then,
he
of
says.
course, his words are immediately refuted afterwards.
Yeah, because...
Well, I mean, they were refuted beforehand.
Of course.
Didn't you work with Psychomantis in the last game there, Ocelot?
That's right. That's right. Good point. I always forget about the first game.
Yeah.
Or about like that guy that got his entire body eaten by crows and then somehow he was able to speak from the beyond. That's not
right.
supernatural.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
That's right.
And
Ocelot.
as we see here in a minute. But again, this could all go into, is this a computer simulation or not? But so he has that device. They're all trying to shoot him. And
her heart is on the wrong side of her
so
body.
her heart's on the right side.
Which is a condition.
So Ocelot did not miss. But this goes back to my whole reading of this game.
Yeah.
Even Ocelot, who seems to have the whole thing under control.
I forgot. Your heart's on the other side.
He really did.
Yeah. Oh, did he really?
Actually did forget this.
Okay.
I think he was trying to shoot her in the heart, and he hit her exactly where he should have had her heart been where it should be.
Sure.
Oh, I just didn't remember everything. I thought I remembered everything. This whole time I had remembered everything.
That works.
I had always planted the thing, and I forgot. All of this was not... You're meant to believe.
Right.
Ocelot has it all under control. He believes he has it all under control. Clearly he doesn't, because Liquid keeps emerging randomly.
Yeah.
But in this case even, he had forgotten the one detail. Oh, wait a minute. I shot her in the heart. How is she not dead? Oh, that's right. I'm remembering the file now.
Yeah.
Her heart's on the right side.
Let me shoot her again with 1,000 missiles, and they all missed.
Yeah.
Because she truly is Fortune.
Yes.
Seems.
So she stands up in front and deflects all of Arsenal's entire payload, or not Arsenal, Ray's
all of
entire
them,
payload, protects everybody. Then she falls down and kind of bleeds out. I'm going through kind of a lot here, so please feel free to interrupt me if you guys have some notes during this or anything that you took down or wanted to say about it. Max, is there anything there?
Yeah, so that's the thing. It's so funny just trying to interpret this game prior to MGS4 and after MGS4 because
Yes.
Yeah.
anyway, just in regards to the whole her being able to deflect the missiles, it's like, is this just a product of it being a simulation or is it supernatural? Well, turns out it's supernatural, and I would have preferred though if like at one point like I don't know, maybe the missiles fell and then Snake's like they didn't work, and then Snake said a dud or that. I would have liked that better. But no,
You just made that seem better.
Yeah, that's all about all I have to say, really. Yeah.
Oh, Kojima, I've got one line here about the story, right? What it turns out, the only thing you need to make a great soldier is a good story.
Yes, that line is a really good line.
Very good line. It's incredibly powerful, and I could probably speak for hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and months and years about that is specific line right there. But stories can do anything. Stories, the right story is the it's like the metaphysical foundation beneath that motivates people to do anything, right?
Yes.
And everything we do is like movement towards the aims delineated in like a specific type of story, or you're using a method that you learned from a story, like the way that humans act and see the world and learn about the world and kind of talk to each other. Everything, a story is at the heart of everything that we do. And while they're trying to just rely on technology and do this and that, and we need the perfect, genetic, we need all the right genes for the perfect soldier. It turns out what makes a good soldier is actually the story and not so much the specific technical little aspects that they're focusing on. Somebody who has a good enough reason for fighting will perform well when it comes to having to fight. And that is what really is behind the Super Soldier Project, right? The Super Soldier Project is actually the Super Story Project. What story motivates people to fight?
Yeah.
That's the real story. And that's why every, especially modern, but going back as far as we have writing, every nation always has some national epic that is the founding of our nation, like Remus and Romulus for Rome,
Right.
Or for Greece, the Iliad, and that whole Gilgamesh for Babylon and Egypt had all their stories. They have their foundational myths that from which they build everything on top of.
Yes.
Yeah. It's genes and memes. It's nature
both.
and nurture.
It is both.
Right.
Yep.
So we have, as part of like our bio on places like Patreon and others, a sort of summary behind why we do what we do on our channel. Like, why is it that we focus? We're doing game analysis, but we're primarily focusing on narrative and storytelling.
Stories, yeah.
Why is that? Why are we not diving into game design and mechanics and things like that as often? And so we wrote up this short essay, and we're going to eventually turn this into like a channel trailer,
Like an intro.
and that sort of thing. But it's really fascinating when you think about it a little bit, how every aspect of our lives is driven by storytelling.
All of it.
You might not have thought of this before or really realized it.
Yeah.
But I'm going to read through this a little bit, and it'll, I think, cement this idea that Kaysen has been elaborating on and how important the story you're telling is. That it drives everything. And particularly being someone who works in marketing and watching how, think of any title fight, if it's boxing or MMA,
Sure.
or any sports game period.
Right.
What is the storyline they're going to try to build up for that week to sell
people
you
to
on
watch.
watching it?
Yeah.
It's all storytelling.
always a story.
There's always drama. What beef are there between these players or coaches or
And think about
whatever.
the best. What was the best fight, the best game you've ever watched? It often is less relevant to the game itself. It's often, there was a whole story behind this leading up to this point, and that's what made it so special. If you just watch the game, you'd be like, that was a good catch in the end zone at the end. Oh, that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, you don't understand. That guy was like adopted and had a horrible life growing up, and then the guy who threw it to him used to hate him, but then they found ways to get along, and they used to be on different teams, and now they're on the same team. And it's like, whoa, okay, there's a lot more going on here than just the game.
They almost, it's not totally artificial, but it's pretty close to artificially create stakes
Yeah,
that raise the level of drama for this event in order to motivate people to watch. Because when the stakes are that high, we got to know what happens. And so storytelling is used everywhere for everything. So let me just read a little bit of this.
Go ahead.
Storytelling is at the center of the human experience. And the truth of that statement becomes evident the more you think about it. How much time do we spend binge watching TV, reading articles or posts from friends on social media? How about news reports, YouTube videos? What do you do when you meet your friends or family for lunch? What do sports networks do when marketing big games or selling title fights? What happens unconsciously when you go to sleep? We are constantly involved with stories, whether listening to them, telling them to others, or telling them to ourselves. It comes as naturally to us as breathing and starts from a very young age. Who hasn't built fortresses, caves, or jungles with blankets and pillows as youngsters? Who hasn't gone on adventures across worlds with nothing but the power of the mind? The funny thing is no one told us to do these things. No one taught us how to pretend. And for most kids, it's the same way. It just comes naturally. Again, the genes part of this discussion.
Yeah, there's some pre-programmed aspect to it, yeah.
Similarly, our ancestors have been telling stories for thousands of years. All of human culture has had this high level of saturation with storytelling. It isn't just about entertainment. We tell stories for many reasons. They serve as a simulation to help us imagine and rehearse problems we might encounter. They give us opportunities to share critical moral lessons or survival techniques. They help us educate one another, practice empathy, win friendships, attract mates, exercise our creativity, work through problems, and tie ideas together. Storytelling is the method by which we have imposed structure and meaning on the world around us. Developing the skills of a good storyteller isn't just important for those who have ambitions to become writers, filmmakers, or game developers. It's essential for building relationships, communicating effectively with coworkers, employers, clients, and working through our personal problems. It's a skill we all need if we want to be successful in whatever path we choose in life. And the art of storytelling is what we analyze on this channel. In doing so, we hope to increase our storytelling skills and find an even deeper appreciation for the stories we've loved and grown up with. So you think about, and this is going to lean into a big part of what we're going to talk about here at the end too, about curation of information as part of storytelling.
Yeah. That's right. It's part of it.
It's
limiting
an essential part of it.
What stories are allowed to be told.
Yes. So when you sit down for dinner with your family, what are you doing? Oh, what did you do today? You're telling a story of what happened to you that day.
You don't actually want to know everything that happens
which parts
to that person.
do you not tell them?
99.99999% of everything that happened you do not tell.
Exactly.
Storytelling is more an act of omission than it is an act of inclusion of what exactly happened, right? And often it also involves adding some spice and sugar to what actually happened 100%. In order to make it interesting.
That's actually huge.
Well, Gandalf says every story deserves a little embellishment.
Yes. Yes. And okay, we might be jumping the gun a bit, so I'm going to save more of this for the talk with the AI. Okay. But this is part of why I think this is so brilliant, the way it presents this. Because the argument made on behalf of the AI is one that is, in many respects, correct.
Oh, it is. It's a right argument.
Which makes it so difficult to contend with it.
Right.
Because it is so deeply human to do exactly the kind of curation that is being suggested here. Yes. We just don't want an AI overlord doing that curation on behalf of us, yet we do it all the time.
We do.
For our audiences, whether at the dinner table, whether our clients at work or our bosses, the board of directors we go and give that presentation to, whether it's our customer base, whether it's our wives and spouses, whether it's our children, doesn't matter. You are constantly curating the information that you share to give the parts that you think are relevant,
Right, you're
or the
honing
parts
it.
that you think will convince or persuade them to do what
Sure.
you want them to do.
Right.
So it is super hypocritical to react in disgust
Right, to
the
that.
suggestion that this AI is making when you do it every day of your waking life to everyone else around you. So that's a teaser for what's coming.
That's great.
But I think that this demonstrates also how important storytelling is to the human experience, and that each and every one of us, to be successful in life, you will be better off if you are a good storyteller, no matter for what purpose, because you're
It's like the
using it
greatest
for
skill.
everything.
Yeah.
So, anything else that you guys want to touch on before we jump into the big thing?
I just have a couple very brief notes that
Okay.
we have Olga. Olga's model was based on Merrill's.
Yes,
From
that's right.
MSG1. Madison Square Garden. MGS1.
There you go.
And Merrill then tells Raiden right before she is killed. Sorry. Olga tells Raiden right before she is killed to live, right? Live, Raiden, live. And anyways, it's echoing Merrill from the previous game. It's all coming full circle. And that is probably the biggest note that I have right now. Do you have anything, Max?
No, not particularly. I was going to say something along the lines of what Mike sort of said when he was reading all that, but no, he did it very well. So
Perfect.
yeah, I have tons to say, obviously, about what's about to come.
Yeah. My last notes leading up to where we're getting to here is Liquid, when he does emerge, he says to Snake, "You're the only one who could free me after all." So part of Liquid's plan to sort of emerge and do what he's doing, which his goal is to go kill the Patriots too.
Right. But he only emerges when
Snake is around,
near. Yeah.
which is why he would have arranged for Snake to be
there.
here,
Yeah,
because
very
he
good.
was the only one, after all, who could free him from Ocelot's control, push him to the front of the consciousness and take over.
Yeah.
It is contingent on Solid being in proximity, which is why he wanted him there. So Liquid manipulated Solid into being there. And of course, there's the great shot where Liquid gets into Metal Gear Ray and he's about to take off. And Snake breaks his bonds.
And runs and dives into the water after him. That was really good.
Chases after him, right? Now, this is something, and I'm bringing this up because this is Kojima talking about the symbolism he purposefully intended to work into that scene. You have Raiden, who is still bound, but Snake breaks his chains
That's very good.
and goes and jumps after Liquid.
Yeah, he gets off the chessboard.
He's off the chessboard.
Yeah,
he has broken free of his genetic destiny, which was all set up in Metal Gear Solid 1. And this is another example of that. So he's able to break his bonds because he is free from the game.
Right, whereas Raiden is still shackled.
Raiden is still shackled at this moment. Maybe gets a little freer at the very end of the story here.
Sure.
Okay. That's all I've got for that. Let's get into
It's basically
the
just the
meat
end
of
at
it
this
here.
point, right? This is it. This is the ending now.
I'm going to pull up the script for this part, and I think
long.
we might as well go through it kind of line by line. But is there anything anyone wants to give as context to kind of work into what you're going to say about this part or anything
Everything
like
we
that?
said for the last 7 episodes.
What's about to happen is a perfect summation of the game's core one-word theme, which is meme, and to what degree, like, just as MGS1 is about to what degree we're controlled by our genetic heritage, Metal Gear Solid 2 is a discussion about to what degree we are controlled by our mimetic heritage, by memes, and to what degree can we, if we even can, break free from that. That's what everything from this point on is about.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So with that as the backdrop, let's get into it. Basically, Arsenal crashes into kind of that Hudson River there, and Solidus and Raiden jump off the top of it right onto Federal Hall.
Federal Hall.
And Solidus realizes that, just starts laughing at the irony of it all.
Right.
And then
it is April 30th.
it's April
Even
30th,
deeper irony.
the date that Rose had been asking Raiden to remember the
which
importance
is when
of.
George Washington, what was it, the day that he became the first president or something like that? I
Yeah.
can't actually remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so
89 or 91.
Solidus brings up that kind of historical, like American history
Yeah.
context behind the importance of that date there. And then also reveals that he was the one who killed Raiden's parents. So he's inciting him to fight him.
Right,
now.
yeah.
Right. It's like he wants to fight. But right before that battle can begin, the colonel calls in one more time. Now, as we've mentioned, this is not GW, who was the AI before throughout this entire
that one
game.
got corrupted, right?
That one is destroyed now.
Yeah.
This is a different AI who is also replicating the colonel and Rose,
Yeah.
talking to him. To begin with, we're not what you'd call human. Over the past 200 years, a kind of consciousness formed layer by layer in the crucible of the White House.
I love it. Can you just take a moment to imagine an AI that was formed
Before,
like in the White House,
before
like,
computers,
yes,
before
but like,
technology.
that's the place.
Yes.
That AI is going to be screwed up. It's going to be so confused if the White House is where it got all of its information. Like it's not.
It's partially running on wood and oil.
Exactly. It's just funny. It's just hilarious. I think it's very funny that the White House, because I would think, oh, it started in military, the Pentagon, a university, somewhere, but the president's house,
Yeah.
like his bedroom.
Yeah, that's the
It's just
foundation of
funny. It's just
its development, of its evolution. It's not unlike the way life started in the oceans 4 billion years ago. The White House.
The caveat to that being that we don't actually know how life started.
Yeah.
But we do know how it started moving after it started.
The White House was our primordial soup, a base of evolution. We are formless. We are the very discipline and morality that Americans invoke so often. How can anyone hope to eliminate us? As long as this nation exists, so will we. Raiden cuts in here. Cut the crap. If you're immortal, why would you take away individual freedoms and censor the net?
That's exactly what he would do. If we die but you live forever, why would you censor it? Yeah, you just said it, buddy.
So Rose cuts in. Jack, don't be silly. Colonel cuts in. Don't you know that our plans have your interests, not ours, in mind? Raiden. What? Rose. Jack, listen carefully like a good boy. Colonel. The mapping of the human genome was completed early this century. As a result, the evolutionary log of the human race lay open to us. Rose. We started with genetic engineering, and in the end we succeeded in digitizing life itself. Colonel. But there are things not covered by genetic information. Raiden cuts in. What do you mean? The Colonel. Human memories, ideas, culture, history. Rose. Genes don't contain any record of human history. Colonel. Is it something that shouldn't be passed on? Should that information be left at the mercy of nature? Rose. We've always kept records of our lives through words, pictures, symbols, from tablets to books. Colonel cuts in, but not all the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed and then passed on, not unlike genes, really.
Right.
So this
Natural
goes back
selection
to
for stories and memes, yeah.
Yeah, this goes back to the title screen. The very first thing that you see on the title screen of the game is like a tablet underwater with like ancient kind of
Like
writing on
Sumerian,
it. Right?
it looks like Sumerian.
And then that kind of passes on to paper, and that kind of passes on to like digital information, right?
The Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So what's being suggested here is that in the past, there were very few people, first of all, who were in positions, maybe even literate in society enough to be able to be given the responsibility of curating information, which of it is saved, which of it is logged, which of it is used in teaching or educating the population. And we had that whole episode a few episodes back where we talked about the printing press sort of like throwing a wrench into that in terms of who could control and put out information. So that was one step into opening that up to the public. But now the digital age has taken that to a way, way, way greater degree of there's just so much, and anybody has access to it, can post it, log it, store it in a form that is, I won't say it's indestructible. I mean, or, hard drives fail.
Right.
It's not perfectly preserved,
it could all
but
disappear.
it's certainly preserved in a way that will last longer than a piece of paper or a tablet that will decay over time. So this is a huge problem in terms of how do we go about the necessary, I'll go ahead and say that outright, the necessary step of curating and logging and ranking the importance of all of this in such a way to where if people want to find information they're looking for, they won't be thrown into a world of chaos, not have any idea which of this data is trustworthy or not, where it's sourced, where it's coming from, who wrote it, why, what were their biases. It's just it's reached a level to where it is so chaotic. How could anyone even hope to be able to pull anything relevant out of this?
Sure.
In the past, it was curated by these people and only certain documents survived. There's very, very small percentage of that. But we have now reached an age where that is changing. And they make a comparison here to the evolution of our species.
Right.
The genetic information is curated and only certain things are passed on. And so let me read that again. But not all of the information was inherited by later generations. A small percentage of the whole was selected and processed, then passed on, not unlike genes, really.
Well, think about it in terms of stories. How many stories you hear every day, how many stories you tell every day. Most of them are forgotten and will never be told again and are never picked up again, ever. But a couple of them are stories that maybe the next week at the dinner party, someone's going to say, oh, tell Joe that thing you told me last week. And, oh, well, okay. And that's how you know you've hit on a story that might actually mean something a little bit. And then those stories get repeated. And so when they say a small selection of the stories were picked to kind of go into the future while all the rest of them didn't, that's not that different to natural selection with genes.
Right. So Rose says that's what history is, Jack. It's this curated, very, very curated level of information in comparison to what would have been available if you were to time travel.
And what actually happened. This is one of the reasons why this is one of the things that made reading history difficult for me. Was learning that how fake history is, how selected history is, and how likely it is that what you're reading about isn't what was actually happening.
Yeah.
Right. And just before we move on, I think it's important to note that, there's definitely advantages to living in the internet era where there are certain tools that are available to us where we can empower the individual to seek out truth for themselves, even if it is chaotic. But it is also true that prior to the internet era, when we did have these curators available to us,
they sucked.
Sorry?
I said they sucked.
Right. They sucked.
They were bad.
They absolutely sucked. Yeah. But the thing is, at least it was a different type of chaos than the one that we're involved in right now. At least it wasn't like there wasn't a whole bunch of disinformation and misinformation in terms of quantity that we had to sort through because we had other people doing that for us, even though a lot of the stuff that we were being fed was likely lies.
Yeah.
Now it's just sort of grown out of control.
That's great. The number of things happening isn't that different. It's just the number of the ways that you hear about how it's preserved is just insane now.
And its accessibility is the problem. So Colonel goes on to say here, but in the current digitized world, trivial information is accumulating every second, preserved in all its triteness, never fading, always accessible. Rose says, rumors about petty issues, misinterpretations, slander. The Colonel, all this junk data preserved in an unfiltered state, growing at an alarming rate. Rose, it will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution.
Twitter, excuse me. Sorry.
Twitter. Yeah. Twitter.
I thought you said a person's name. Okay.
No.
So, yes, but that's a great, let's stop there. That's a great example. Social media in particular a place like Twitter with its
Character
hard
limits.
confines and character limits.
Yeah.
There's almost zero nuance to
Right.
any discussion,
can't-
hard discussion happening there. And it's mostly people making an attempt in some witty fashion, which is what it is really well designed for. How can I,
Yes.
in this short,
Sound bites
punctual
and-
way,
Yeah.
say something to just humiliate you or make you look stupid? It's almost as if it was designed for that. So
Yes,
it's
it
just
was.
a bunch of that back and forth
Yeah.
and people sharing information. And I have found this even in the course of this analysis,
Yeah.
where I read our own comment section and people making claims about this and this and this about the game's development history or this game mechanic or whatever. And then someone coming and being, actually, that's not true.
yeah.
Oh, this character is actually a descendant of some character, like the son or daughter or something like that, from some character in Metal Gear Solid 3, and that's why they have this ability. And then someone immediately coming and being like, oh, that's actually totally debunked and blah, 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 and like getting into arguments about it. It's like, dude,
That's so fun.
anytime I read someone's comment in our comment section and it sounds like credible what they're saying, and I
just
feel
kind of
an immediate sort of like, oh, let me share that on the
Yeah.
podcast next time. How do I know what that person's saying is true, dude?
Right.
How do I actually know that? So often we are just taking for granted. This person might have no idea what they're talking about. They just sound credible.
And this is why societies run on trust. Trust is like the base, financial, what is it? The currency. The basic currency of any society is trust. Because once you get to that point where you're hearing all these things and your immediate thought is, I don't know if it's true or not, that's a fracture in your culture, right? That you're hearing things from your peers, the people around you, people who like you, people who you like, and it's like, oh, but I don't know if any of that's true. Well, society has reached a difficult point there because once you get rid of trust, like Confucius, this is one of the old Confucian ideas. This goes way back, but he was saying that the three things any society needs is weapons, food, and trust. And if you have to get rid of one of the three, you get rid of weapons. And if you have between food and trust, if you have to get rid of one of those, you get rid of food. A society cannot stand without trust, right?
Yeah.
And that's sort of where we're headed. We're headed towards a place where no one can trust not only what we see on the internet, but also what we hear from the people around us because they got their info from other people on the internet. And so it puts you in a difficult place in the world that most societies that have this problem don't last too long, too much longer.
I
And when
can't-
everybody,
Oh,
Sorry,
go ahead, Max. You go first.
Well, I was just going to say, and also when everybody's lives are increasingly just portrayed on the internet, it becomes harder and harder to live a moral, authentic existence to the point that people want to put their trust in you.
Yeah.
You
That's
know?
very
There you
true.
go.
a complicating factor.
Yes. That's
Yeah.
actually very good. And if you apply that to institutions as well, that's it.
Yeah, I can't stress enough. I've been very open throughout the course of us doing this show about some of my struggles with depression and things of that nature. And a huge part of it for the last 15 or so years, so I'm 37, this would have began somewhere in my early 20s, where I was now leaving home. So my whole life I had trusted the memes my parents had passed down to me as being true.
Right.
These principles, these things they're telling me, a lot of it literal. They
Yes,
believed
yes.
this actually happened.
Right.
You know, I grew up believing all of that. And as I stepped out and began to explore these things myself, I have this really deep passion for searching for what is true.
Right.
That, and I do not mean to say this in a way that is disparaging because, as I'm going to try to make the point of, it is almost better for one's sanity not
do that,
actually have this mindset.
I feel like that's almost what Snake says kind of towards the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is a huge part of my note taking for the end too. I have more notes on Snake's speech at the end than I do for this part about the AI stuff. But a lot of people, they have a belief system. They've decided on it. They have found what are their guiding moral and ethical principles and under which how should we term it in Metal Gear Solid terms? Their own like meme ideology,
Sure.
kind of like set or foundation of beliefs, right? That they have, whether they inherited that from their parents or whether they discarded that one and found it, they have found what it is.
Right.
And everything that they believe or that comes to them on the news is filtered through that.
Yes,
it is curated by that set of beliefs and principles in order to choose which parts are true and which parts are not. I accept that one. It supports my moral set of beliefs that I've chosen. This one contradicts it. I reject that. Must not be true.
It becomes a heuristic, just like a way of filtering data.
Part of my insanity over the course of the last 15 years of trying to find truth in my own life has been watching people practice and engage in that. It is clear and obvious that that's what's going on.
Right.
And for me, there was almost this, I don't know what I want to call it. I'll call it elitist for now.
Sure.
You're not a real truth seeker like me.
Right.
You're just trying to validate. You're not looking for information. You're looking for validation of what you already believe.
Sure.
And all of these things that contradict what you believe and would invalidate it, you toss out because you're not interested in the truth like I am. So I continued my search and continued my
That'll
search.
drive you crazy,
and continued my search. And all it did over the course of that decade plus was drive me further and further into resentment of people, into a distrust of people, and distrust of institutions, and a realization that my bandwidth as a single individual is so limited that there is no way, there is just no way that I will be able to search through all of this garbage that the AI brings up here to find what is actually true. I do not have the capacity. If I want to eat and have a life and support myself, there's too much time during the day that has to be spent in those pursuits of survival and living a healthy life. There's no time left over to do all of that. And maybe I could pick one topic
and
upon which I could do that for. But then I would be hopelessly uninformed in every other issue there is. And trying to be a generalist and be somewhat informed on all of it leaves you still hopelessly naive and uninformed in a way to where you could confidently state what is the truth about this thing. And so I found myself in positions where I could never step forward and in confidence tell other people, hey, this is what it really is in a conversation.
I've noticed that.
But also so completely disgusted to hear other people trying to tell me what it was because I knew that they weren't actually looking for the truth. And I just, my life, I guess my thoughts about people, my thoughts about society, my thoughts about the human race became darker and darker and darker to the point where I just saw no hope. I was one of those people rooting for the asteroid for a period of time.
Was that Carl Sagan?
Yeah. Well, not Carl Sagan. It was the
comedic.
Yes, not Carl Sagan. George Carlin.
That's what I was.
And he's a great example of this thing too. I believe he is the type of person who was a real truth seeker in life and became very jaded on the world as a result of that. That's almost the inevitable result of being that type of person. You're going to end up there. Is what I discovered, and much of what he said, it reflected very much my own feelings.
You know, this is also an unfortunate fact of Alan Watts, too, if you look at his life and the way he died young. And he was, especially towards the end of his life, he was just always drunk. And he admitted to some people around him, I don't like myself when I'm sober. That's how Alan Watts, and he's great. Like, same thing with Carl Sagan, with George Carlin. It's like brilliant people who you can learn a lot from. But when they lived out their own ideas, they all came to this very cynical place.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, I mean, Alan Watts is a truth seeker. I think he's absolutely a truth seeker.
Yeah.
He's changed my life in so many ways. He's so profound. Yet there was something that was driving him to a really bad place that I want to avoid.
Yeah.
I don't want to be where he ended up,
Yeah.
right? Which means that some of what he is advising me on needs to actually be taken with a grain of salt or discarded for my own well-being.
Yeah, for your own sanity,
Yeah.
for your own mental health.
But there's also a place where that could lead, which is where Plato said that true wisdom is knowing that you know nothing, something like.
Yes.
Now, and people say he
Yes.
never actually said that. I don't know who to attribute the quote
That's
to.
another great thing you see
Someone
all
like
the time
Plato.
online, where they'll just put a quote out there and say George Washington said this or Benjamin Franklin said this. And the meme of it is you can't believe everything you read on the internet.
Quote.
A quote from Benjamin Franklin or something like
yes.
that, right?
Now, but Plato
the
said
truth
something
is that
like
actually
that.
I said that.
Oh no, you did, but and then some people, that might have been it actually. When you said that, maybe someone in the comments was like, "Oh, Plato didn't say that. That was technically," and I don't remember the rest of the comment, but I do remember someone said maybe he didn't actually say that, so I just have to bring it up. See, this is so dumb. Now it's like stemming the flow of our conversation because I have to like make okay.
But
I don't
this
know.
is the AI's entire point.
Yes.
You're gonna go in circles or just hit dead end after dead end,
Right.
Because you can't cycle through all of this sludge and garbage,
Right.
non-relevant information as an individual, even as societies. It's just impossible, and it's ramping up. It's getting worse every day.
And my point is more or less, if you are humbled to the point where you now know the only thing you know is that you don't know anything, that's like the starting point of wisdom, then that can build up to something positive in the future. You just can't stay there. You just can't stay in that place. But if you allow yourself to realize, just have that realization that I don't know what I think I know. I'm not as smart as I think I want to be or as smart as I think I am. I am, like you said, there's only 24 hours in a day. I am incapable of doing this.
Yeah.
That there's a point where that can become the foundation for wisdom, for leading a wise life into the future. But you can't stay there, and you will have to find a way to get past it. And so that may even entail finding an institution or a group of people who maybe each individual, and of course there's people who are just not that smart. Like you can't, and that's where you mentioned the elitist idea of, oh, I'm a real truth seeker. That at some point, maybe the institution is sailing a long 1,000-year journey towards the truth that isn't something that you individually are just going to find right now, but that you can join yourself to a group that is slowly, albeit maybe, trying to make its way together as a community towards something that would be more considered the truth, right? That's maybe a more optimistic way of viewing it. But are you just going to be a cynic your whole life, or are you going to live?
Exactly. So this is the problem that is being established by the AI here. And it's a very, very strong basis or foundation for the argument that curation is necessary. Someone, who is it, is the real question that everyone asks. But someone has to be in charge of this.
That's not it.
Otherwise, we will destroy ourselves quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that the evidence of that is becoming more and more obvious all the time.
No one can do it, yet it must be done.
The problem of misinformation rampant on the internet, and nobody being able to reach a consensus on who is trustworthy and who is not, who is lying to you and who is not, and when are they and when are they not. It's a constant battle for people, and it is exhausting, and it is depressing to try. And there are so many people who I feel like, oh, man, I can't keep up with this, so I just choose this one.
Right.
And they are now in the hands, helpless sheep, in the hands of whoever is curating the information they give to them.
Yes.
And so when all the people come at them and say, you're a sheep and all you do is, it's true, but what choice do they have?
What are you going to do? Because there's a hyper-individualist bent, which is, it sounds like maybe that you were kind of taking over the past 15 years of this hyper-individualist, I, me, myself, I have to know the truth, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the collectivist approach, which is, I'm a sheep.
Yeah.
And there is probably a good balance between the two, where you can retain some amount of your individuality, yet also join yourself to a larger cause that you could never accomplish on your own.
Yeah. And
There's got to be like a middle, and everyone's going to argue about that point.
Everyone wants to believe they're free, but if you live in a society, there's a lot of things you have agreed to as part of the,
they call it the contract,
the social contract.
Yeah.
You've agreed, I will give up my
autonomy
on those things in exchange for safety, in exchange for an easier life or a higher quality of life or whatnot. Or, I don't have to do everything myself. There are other people out there who can provide those services and make it easier on me so that I can just focus on the things I want to focus on. So as part of that social contract, you are already giving up an immense amount of quote unquote freedoms.
Yes.
So where is that balance? Everybody argues it, and you have this political party here who says the balance or that line should be drawn here, and these people say it should be drawn here, and that's going to continue forever. There will never be an end to that debate.
Because humans are social creatures.
Yes.
Yet, I listened to a video this morning from a guy named Max Derritt, who said something along, this was, I think, your most recent video, Max, something along the lines of how Metal Gear Solid 2 almost destroyed you.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a quick summary of what you said in that video?
That was a very good video.
Well, I'll give the very short version and then the long version. The very short version is basically everything that Mike just said. Mike, you and I need to go bowling, man. Like, seriously, that's everything that you just said about just trying to seek out truth for yourself, sort of free from the biases of everybody else in the world, trying to create something that you can truly attach yourself to. That is my life in a nutshell. But in regards to why Metal Gear Solid 2 almost destroyed me, how can I sort of put this in a way without breaking down, frankly? So all we're talking about in regards to the way that misinformation and disinformation is just progressively getting worse. I truly understood what was being discussed here in the scene between Raiden and the AI in 2010. In 2010, I was 16. Now think about everything that's happened between 2010 and now, 15 years later.
Yeah.
And realizing when you're 16, oh my God, I know what they're saying. I know where things are going to go. And you feel compelled, even at the cost of your own skin, to try and warn people because you know just how bad things are going to get. And it's, 15 years later, I was right. But back then, because I was 16 and I was very naive, I didn't really know how to speak about this sort of stuff. I talk about in the video how my education was completely compromised because I grew up with undiagnosed autism and ADHD. And the way I sort of survived school was that I memorized anything, but just as a way to sort of get through it. But as a consequence, I didn't actually learn anything.
Yeah.
But anybody who has autism or ADHD and understands it will tell you that if you want them to learn something and to learn it well, just find out what they're interested in.
Yes, exactly.
And they will do better than almost anybody in the human population in regards to that subject. Well, the thing that I was interested in was video games.
Yeah.
And so when I played Metal Gear Solid 2 at the age of 16, I watched that scene again, for the first time since I was 10. When I listened to that scene, I was like, wow, this is long. Can I get back to fighting Solidus? But then I finally understood it. And I remember when I experienced that scene, a light just clicked on inside my head. My literal third eye opened. It felt like it was the first time I truly learned something. And because I had no education, I didn't really have any way to express what that scene really did to me. But reflecting on it, it left an imprint in two ways. One was just realizing what they were saying about disinformation and misinformation. But the other thing was realizing that, oh my God, I'm Raiden.
Yeah.
And because I, like him, realized the complete hollowness of myself, and that whatever sense of identity I had was a product of other people's wishes and memes influencing me without me examining those things critically. To use Kaysen's words, I was a sheep. And thanks to Metal Gear Solid 2, even though it, like, just having the realization that I was a completely hollow non-person revealed to me, it was thanks to it that I was able to work my way out of that. And yeah, it sort of culminated with the release of that video that I did on my channel, The Most Profound Moment in Gaming History, where I realized, okay, I'm actually pretty good at analyzing things that I'm interested in. And yeah, here we are. I don't know if that...
Yeah.
That was great. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful. And what's so funny is we have a video that we'll have released at the time this goes up just 2 days ago, where we talk about why video games are actually a good thing
for child development,
for child development and for kids, making the arguments in behalf of how they actually help cognition and improve these sorts of things and certain skills. And one story I didn't share there that I had meant to, as my friend Bryce, I think, was sitting off camera, or maybe that was a different episode. But anyway, my friend Bryce grew up similarly with a learning disability called dyslexia. And just he explained it to me, and it was fascinating to learn how he sees words on a page and what his mind had to come up with as a solution to make those things make sense, because he just can't read them the way, what would be the correct term for this, like a normative brain maybe would, or we should expect a child to be able to. And so he's 10 or 12 years old and cannot read.
Right.
And they're telling him, sound it out, the education system, you know, gov, earn, meant. And all he would do, because he's not seeing those things divided on the page the way that they're telling him to. So he's just listening and repeating what they say back at them and doing no learning at all. And it wasn't until, among other things, but Final Fantasy VII, this game that was so cool, but that he was desperate to understand the story of. He wanted to know what they were talking about, that he formed his own individual method that taught him how to read. It was a video game that inspired that. And as Max was saying, you have to find what they are interested in, what holds their attention.
Humans are good at learning things. Babies, all humans are good at learning. It's just the way that they're being taught.
The methodology of classical, traditional education does not work for a lot of our kids.
And often boys.
And in fact, it's the opposite of what would actually inspire learning. And I talked about my experiences in school and thinking I was dumb for my entire childhood, and that led to a lot of my particular problems. But I love that story, Max, because it reinforces this again. The right story, the right method, the right thing that holds your attention is what will facilitate your learning. And
then you go from there to reading Nietzsche.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude, like I said in the video, and that video that I just put out on my channel, video games taught me everything. Kaysen, I couldn't read. When I was in university, I had to do an English course, and I was told to read a book called Robinson Crusoe.
Oh, of course,
Oh, that game.
I tried reading that so 4 times, and I couldn't do it. I think I might have failed the class. But I do videos on Silent Hill on my channel, and I pick up Psychology and Alchemy by Carl Jung. Understand it, no problem.
Great book,
no problem, because I care.
Because you're interested. If you cared about when was Robinson Crusoe written? Like 250 years ago, maybe?
Yeah.
Like if you cared about 1700s, like...
linguistics or something.
I just don't care enough about it, right?
Yeah.
But... Maybe I can get into that, but for the most part, it's like if you don't care about that stuff, then how are you going to read? How are you going to slog through a big volume about it?
Yeah.
Of course, like somebody who's interested in submarines will love reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Someone who cares about whales will love reading Moby Dick. These are books that a lot of people like don't love reading because they get overly technical with like how things work.
Yeah.
Specifically Moby Dick with whales or Robinson Crusoe or any of that stuff. Like an island. What is the economy of like an island? If you care about that, that's the perfect book for you. If you don't care about that, like I was forced to read, I say forced, I was forced to read Beowulf in high school. Anyone who knows me now knows that I freaking love Beowulf. But dude, I couldn't have even told you what that book was about when I read the translation of it back in high school. I was boring. I was bored to death reading Beowulf. I hated that book. And I got a D in the class.
That this is an extra layer, I think, to tie this back to the speech here. An extra layer of difficulty in communicating information. Yeah. Not only is it so vast in the digital era, and so much of it just flat out wrong,
right?
Or a lie, even a malicious lie to misdirect people or misinform people. Not only is that a problem, you also have all of these individuals with their particular brain construction.
Right, and you need to approach them in a specific way.
They need to have information given to them in a very specific way in order for it to land, in order for it to be retained, in order for it to have maximum impact or move them in some way. And I have, I spend most of my life, of course, on this podcast, it might seem like I dominate conversations and I talk and just like chatterbox. Anyone who knows me in the real knows that I get into some other social situation, I'll stand in a corner and like do no talking at all.
Yeah, me too.
But I observe a lot and I see people getting so frustrated, maybe with its politics or something. Look at all this stuff going on. How are you not more angry and doing more activism? And it's like, dude, this particular thing strikes you because of your exact life experience that brought you to the realizations and the things that you care about, and your brain construction is perfectly suited to care about this thing as deeply as you do. Yeah. And so to you, it feels like, because this prism, I'm telling you, of individuality, individual experience.
That's why
it makes it so hard to imagine a different brain.
Oh yeah,
and
impossible. Not impossible.
It could have the same exact problem presented to it and not give a fetch. And to me, it's the most important thing on earth. Yeah. And how can you not care? What's wrong with you? It's so easy to assume they're a bad person or otherwise. I don't know. You get what I'm trying to say.
I do, yeah.
But you have that added layer on top of this. And so, again, that's the problem that has been established. Now, let's see what the AI's solution to this is.
Very nice.
And determine whether we think this is a good argument or not. Okay. So, Rose says it will only slow down social progress, reduce the rate of evolution. The Colonel says, Raiden, you seem to think that our plan is one of censorship. Raiden says, are you telling me it's not? Rose says, you're being silly. What we propose to do is not control content, but to create context. Raiden says, create context. Huge Izuchi. Colonel, the digital society furthers human flaws and selectively rewards the development of convenient half-truths. Just look at the strange juxtapositions of morality around you. Rose, billions spent on new weapons in order to humanely murder other humans.
Yep.
The Colonel, rights of criminals are given more respect than the privacy of their victims.
Right. Yep.
I see that all the time in my line of work.
Me too.
Rose, although there are people suffering in poverty, huge donations are made to protect endangered species. Everyone grows up being told the same thing. The Colonel, be nice to other people. Rose, but beat out the competition. Colonel, you're special. Believe in yourself and you will succeed. Rose, but it's obvious from the start that only a few can succeed. Right. The Colonel, you exercise your right to freedom, and this is the result. All rhetoric to avoid conflict and protect each other from hurt. The untested truths spun by different interests continue to churn and accumulate in the sandbox of political correctness and value systems. Rose, everyone withdraws into their own small gated community, afraid of a larger forum. They stay inside their little ponds, leaking whatever truth suits them into the growing cesspool of society at large. Colonel, the different cardinal truths neither clash nor mesh. No one is invalidated, but nobody is right. Rose, not even natural selection can take place here. The world is being engulfed in quote-unquote truth. Colonel, and this is the way the world ends, not with a bang, but with a whimper.
Yes,
Rose,
Elliot.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Rose, we're trying to stop that from happening. Colonel, it's our responsibility as rulers, just as in genetics, unnecessary information and memory must be filtered out to stimulate the evolution of the species. So let's stop there for a second, take a step back, and what do you think about this?
Let's have Max.
Max, what do you think about this plan?
They have a point.
They do have a point.
Like, yeah, it's just hearing you read all that. It's so disturbing, and what really drives sort of like the nail into the heart of the person listening to it and the argument is just how pompous they are and how how justified they are in being pompous. It's because they are computer artificial intelligences. Theoretically, they could solve this problem. But the question is, are we willing to sacrifice a large degree of what we at least perceive to be our freedom just so we can solve this issue? Do we want to have an AI regulating this information, or do we want to try and deal with it ourselves? Well, as they make the argument later on, it seems that, people, like I would like to think that I would be more interested in finding out truth and be able to overcome my biases, but there are a lot of people that are not only incapable of doing that, but they will do it because they're happy to abuse the freedom that comes with, what is the quote? You've done nothing but abuse your freedom. You don't deserve to be free. We're not the ones smothering the world. You are. And they're talking about how, like, people who live in a free society, they abuse the freedom that comes with, not engaging with truthful information, but are more than willing to sort of live in unconscious bliss. And because of that, the AIs justify why they need to control everything. Now,
yeah, I think, sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but I think what they say here later is you lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
Right. That's like the dopest like insult I've ever heard. I mean, put aside whether or not, free will is correct or like an actual thing or not. What they're saying is like, well, are you going to be able to like take on the responsibility to determine what is true in the digital age? Can you even do that as a human? No? Then maybe we should control you. But I mean,
is it really just one or the other?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And plus, do you have faith that these AI are the ones that are going to be able to do it? And let me just say, like, one big argument against that. I got 4 words for you: Metal Gear Solid 4.
Yeah.
So,
and this is what I've been building up to for this entire analysis. I've been teasing it. Everybody who thinks they are capable of doing this is delusional. Completely delusional. And we see this step by step with all these characters. Ocelot, of all the characters that we laughed over and over again, of course he's doing that on purpose.
Because he knows everything.
He is in control of everything, yet he forgot that her heart was on the right side, not the left. He makes a mistake somewhere, no matter how careful, no matter how well thought out, no matter how intelligent, no matter how capable he is. Nobody is infallible. Everyone will make a mistake. And that mistake will come to bite you in the butt and ruin you at some point. And this was a huge part of our analysis of BioShock. They had an ideology that drove them to build that city and to found that society, and they believed they had it all figured out. And there was one thing they could have never planned for, because they didn't even know the thing existed until they were there on the bottom of the ocean and discovered it. That completely ruined the entire project. And that thing is always out there, no matter how well you plan. And this is true not just for human beings, but for AIs, no matter how much faster they can process and how much more information they can compute and plan for. There is, like you were saying, this goes back to the Jurassic Park analysis, just an element of chaos in nature
itself
that is impossible to predict or plan for, that will humble you at some point. And so anyone stepping forward saying, I'm the one who should be in control. My ethics are correct. My judgment is correct. I am the person who should be in control of this because clearly we need it. We've already established that. I agree, by the way. Me, personally, Mike, I agree with all the problems they're pointing out.
I know, that's what makes it so hard.
This is a real problem, and it should not, this cannot continue.
This cannot continue.
This uncurated, chaotic, crazy cesspool of information where nobody knows who's right, and it literally drove me insane to the point to, like I've talked about in previous podcasts, I had no desire to be on this planet anymore. And that's what it will do to you if you try to curate and search through all of it and find the parts that are relevant or true. And if you're being honest with your own ability to determine what is and isn't true along the way. If you're not honest with yourself about it, you'll think you found all the right things. But that's my whole point.
But now you're just tricking yourself.
You're just tricking yourself into, you can't plan for all the contingencies. If you're admitting to yourself you can't do that, you will find all the problems and you're just left realizing you know nothing. You're worse off than you were before you did all the research and searching.
It's often I've seen that.
The more you know, the more you realize you don't. And you're in an even worse spot than you were when you were super ignorant.
Unless you accept that
you have to accept
that the only thing I know is that I know nothing, and then use that as a basis for wisdom and then move forward. Okay, Max, you were going to break in here briefly a little bit ago.
Oh, no, the thing I was just going to add on to is human beings are infallible, and that is especially true for the AI that they create. And as I just hinted at, that is especially demonstrated in regards to Metal Gear Solid 4.
Okay.
That's all I was going to say.
I look forward to understanding that argument. I have not played 4 yet.
So now we're at a crossroads. Do we allow AI to control what we see digitally, or do we as a species come together, maybe with certain individuals that are better at doing it, leading those who aren't, sending an example and realizing, hey, we don't necessarily know everything. We have to work together so that way we can maintain our freedom and fight for the freedom of our children, their children's children, to be able to make our own decisions.
We have a comment here in our Patreon from Retromancers, Keith Comito, who has been on our show multiple times in the past, who says, without getting too technical, there may be a way to get the best of both worlds by having a decentralized open source AI that can do this sort of curation, but whose rulers are clearly visible to everyone and modifiable by everyone via consensus.
Oh, geez. I don't know.
Well, no, but who? What do you mean by everyone?
This is literally Atreides. There's a single slim sliver of a path that if we walk it perfectly, but then you have the same.
Oh, problem. Sorry, I said rulers. He said rules, not rulers.
Oh, that's better.
Yes,
that's better.
Rules. A set of rules, not rulers. I read that correctly because my eyes are horrible from this distance reading. He said rules. Yes. I find myself in positions where and I'm not trying to attribute this to you, Keith. This has just sparked a different set of talking points in my own mind. There have been many times where I sort of come to a conclusion and I give, here's what I think the answer to this problem is, and quickly realize that this is an ideal situation. And if people could just get on board with it, it would work. And it may even be true.
Dostoevsky has some words for you.
That's just not reality.
It's just not going to happen.
That nobody will get on board. Not everybody will get on board.
Yeah.
And people will throw wrenches into something that should ideally work.
Yeah.
And
just for fun.
Just to mess with it. And it's just
because it's Joker.
And so there's so many things where people ask my opinion on something like, what do you think is the answer to this? And it's like,
the answer?
I'm not even going to say it because even if what I'm saying may technically be a great idea, it's just not feasible because people won't get on board with it.
Oh, right.
There's just no hope of convincing people.
Yeah.
So I'm not even going to talk about it. I'm not even going to bring it up.
And then Keith says, note that I said there may be a way. Emphasis on the word may. Yes,
right.
indeed.
The research that Keith is doing is investigating that may be, that what if, that is it possible.
And honestly, that's worth investigating because if that way exists, let's find it.
So there was something else I really, really wanted to say that I'm forgetting at this point, but I think it's going to come up again with the snake speech. So I think we can move on from here.
Okay, good.
So Raiden says, and you think you're qualified to decide what's necessary and not? The Colonel says, absolutely. Who else?
Like with relish. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you. You said it. Yeah.
Who else could wade through the sea of garbage you people produce, retrieve valuable truths, and even interpret their meaning for later generations?
I mean.
I remembered. I remembered it.
Point.
I remembered what I was going to say. Gosh, I'm so glad I remembered this.
Okay.
We react. We recoil in disgust at this condescension from such statements like this, right? And we say, what a horrible, terrifying thing to have someone step in and try to impose or interpret for us. And I just want to point out the hypocrisy in each and every one of you, including myself, at recoiling at such a thing.
Yeah.
This is exactly what we do every damn day of our lives. And this is exactly what we do with our children.
Right.
Oh, they come and ask us, why is this or this a thing? And we use our ideology to explain it to them and tell them how it is.
Or to oversimplify because they're little and maybe they don't understand yet. Yeah.
What are you doing? Right. What do you think you're doing?
Curating.
You are telling them
You're
exactly what you want them to believe.
Right.
To be a part of the thing that you value as the truth.
And here's the thing. If you don't do it, your kids will be even worse off. You can't just not tell them anything.
So when I say this, right, it might sound like I'm, calling you a hypocrite to like criticize you or something. What I'm trying to say is you have to do this.
Right.
You don't have a choice but to do this for your own sanity in life.
And for the sanity of your children.
We recoil when someone is suggesting being that person above us. No, we want to be able to choose, but yet we don't want to give our children a choice. We don't want to give our friends and family a choice when we're trying to educate them on a topic that we feel passionately about.
Yeah.
We're curating what we tell them.
Sure.
We don't want to
commenting on YouTube.
We don't want to give our client a choice. Really, we want to persuade them. We want to convince them. And so we're only going to show them the data that's relevant to convincing them that we are the ones they should choose.
Yep.
Come to us. Here's all the data. We're not going to tell you this and that. We'll just conveniently leave that data out because that'll make us look bad. And you do this all the time.
Yep, everyone does.
You
it all
are
the time,
doing
always.
this now.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel good when someone's doing it to, but it's happening to you all the time. It's happening to you via your alternative media sources that you get your information from. It's happening to you from the company you work at and what they choose to at your all hands meeting when everyone comes in and they're like, oh, here's our reports for the year and everything's looking so great. And oh my goodness, the future looks bright.
Also, we have to lay off 12% of you.
Guess what they didn't include in that report and what they talk about behind doors with the board of directors.
You don't know.
And you don't know that, and that feels crappy, right?
Right.
But you're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
This is just what we do.
Yeah.
And the AI we created and that
do it too,
follows its master's directives and programming will do the same thing.
Right.
And
we don't know how to,
there is a necessary element to this.
Yes.
Right? There really is. In order for any of this information to have any meaning or relevance, it has to be curated to some degree. So I hope we've stressed enough that not only is it inevitable because we all just do it naturally because we want to persuade people to our ideas, but you have to do it or else you'll be swimming in this cesspool of garbage ideas and irrelevant information to a point where it drives you insane.
And all the while thinking or feeling like, oh, all those chuds out there.
Yeah.
While you're swimming in literal poop. You're swimming in a cesspool, like trying to find like something valuable in it, and all the while making fun of all the people around you who like live meaningful lives and like aren't worried about whatever you're concerned about. You know?
And what really matters here is, are you a person who is willing to admit that?
Right.
Are you a person who's willing to be honest with yourself about this issue? You don't have all the answers you think you have. You don't know all the things you think you know. Guy, keyboard warrior on Twitter, talking down to everybody about how brainwashed and idiotic they are. You are not planning for all the contingencies that you think you are. You don't have it all figured out. No matter how much research or time or effort or passion that you've put into this, you are fallible just like every other person, and there's something you overlooked that will come back to bite you, and it's only in admitting your own incompetence as an individual and your own limited bandwidth as an individual that you have any hope of being able to really foresee the bad stuff coming that you might not have accounted for, or being able to adjust to it when it happens. Because you're not so dug in over here and dug your own grave and entrenched yourself. You have some flexibility
you need to have
in your ideology to be able to adjust to a changing circumstance or a new truth that you didn't account for. So anyway.
It's like a tree. There are trees that are too brittle. Actually, no. This is like a wand for Harry Potter. Now I'll go back to the tree analogy. Some trees have this amount of flexibility within them, right? Where they can bend like quite a bit, right? But a perfectly flexible tree is one that is literally just lying on the floor. Yeah. You also need some rigidity as well. You need a balance between the flex and the rigidity so that way the wind won't break it over. But at the same time, it can still sway with the wind, but won't just be so flexible that it's just literally laying on the floor getting stepped on.
Right. Okay, so let's get back to Raiden here. I'll decide for myself what to believe and what to pass on.
That's what everyone thinks. Everyone thinks
Colonel says, but is that even your own idea? I love this part.
Yeah.
Rose says, or something Snake told you. Because this is exactly what Snake just told him back on Arsenal before they fought the Rays. And this is, again, my point to you. This idea that you're bringing out, that you think is yours in your online arguments, is that actually your own idea?
Now, you can still argue that just because you heard it from someone else doesn't mean that you can't incorporate it into your being and have it then emerge from you. Because where did Snake hear it from? Then he probably heard it from someone.
It wasn't Snake's idea.
You can either do the turtles all the way down approach, where there is no origin for it at all that can ever be pointed to, or you can say that it's okay to incorporate things and then incorporate them into your being. And then when you then speak them, that is still you speaking. But yes, you are made up of 1,000 different parts. You're not just like one thing. You're tons of different things. You are your ancestors. You are their ancestors. You are your community. You are a body, a part of like greater bodies and smaller bodies, right? And then you have two hemispheres of your brain that like sometimes disagree with each other. If you there's experiments you can do that shut down one side or the other, and then you can ask the same person the same question, and depending on which hemisphere is responding, you'll get a different answer, right? And it's like, you're not even one person inside yourself. Like, at what point do you just accept that and say, no, this is the snake. Snake is now a part of me. Like, he has instilled his ideas within me, and that's who I am. Or are you going to hold to this? I'm me. I'm an individual. I'm my own self. I'm a buffered self, not a porous self, as Charles Taylor uses the words. I am my own little isolated thing, and nothing affects me, and this is all me, right? Or you can just accept that you are kind of a conduit for different things to kind of flow in and out of.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, Case. And everybody's a summation of everybody else's ideas and influences. The question, though, that the AIs are trying to put forward is, did you examine those ideas that you inherited consciously, or did you accept them unconsciously?
Yeah,
Which is the problem that he's pointing out. And then what does he say, Mike?
That's proof of your incompetence right there. You lack the qualifications to exercise free will.
So good.
Yeah. So I want to add to this too. This is something that we were discussing a little bit on the Patreon stream about a week ago when I was taking notes for this. We were talking about artistic genius and that kind of thing, like what classifies as being a genius or not, or is Hideo Kojima a genius or is he not? We're kind of having a little bit of a debate there.
Where's the line?
I won't get into like the weeds on what we talked about there because I don't really think it's that important or relevant. But one thing that I think is very, very true is, and we watched this series a lot, I want to say maybe 12, 15 years ago, Everything is a Remix.
Oh, yeah.
There's a little internet series that went into details about not only in the music industry, but in the film industry and other things, how much of what you are listening to in your popular music or in popular movies is just straight up lifted out of something from the past that you're just not aware of. It's a lot. I mean, that's where the whole term remix comes from. It's a musical thing where they would take a beat or a loop from one song, reuse that, and then contextualize it in a little bit of a different way, do a different spin on it, and essentially remix that music into a new piece of music. I like to use the term mixtape. We are, all of us, essentially just mixtapes.
Yeah, it's
walking,
I like that.
Walking mixtapes.
Do people know, okay, back in the day, I used to listen to the radio and get a cassette, and then on my system, I would record the radio whenever a song came on I liked. I would hit record, and then I'd stop it, and I'd wait for another song that I liked. I don't know how many people younger than us understand that.
Younger than us, maybe not.
But people older than us probably. But we were around the time where CDs were already big. My family still had a cassette player and recorder, which was essential there. But the idea is, I like that. Record. Your brain is doing that same thing. You hear something, you're listening. I like that one. I like that. Boom, your brain hits record. I'm going to listen to that. I'm going to internalize that. I'm going to soak it in. Okay, stop. Now it's part of me, right?
Yeah. So essentially, to me, this sort of debate between originality, or are you an original thinker, or do you come up with original ideas and the stories that you make?
It's not that originality has no value. It's just not what people think it is.
Well, it's not what people think it is my point.
There you go.
Very rarely, almost never, does a person have a truly original idea.
It's just your ignorance if you think it's original.
Not only, even if it's not a part of their influences necessarily, we have the whole collective unconscious idea that we've talked about a ton in other series, and I won't go into that now, as like a part of the equation of trying to evaluate whether anything is truly original. But what I think individuality and originality as an individual, as a thinker, as a creator can really come in is, how do you go about uniquely creating your own little mixtape that is not the same as anyone else's mixtape? Like my mixtape, the songs I record and how I choose to arrange them, and maybe insert this one in the middle of that one and rearrange them, is a different mixtape from anybody else's mixtape.
In a way.
And maybe you are a genius at making mixtapes that are really interesting and real different stylistically from other people's mixtapes. But the idea is it's still a mixtape. It's still a collection of ideas that you heard, accepted, rejected, whatever, all throughout your life from other people. And so what the Colonel is saying here, that's not even your own idea. That's exactly what anyone could reply to you on anything you say.
All the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
That's not your idea. You took that from someone. We have this podcast where we come on and talk forever about all these things that we think and believe and try to incorporate that into our analysis. And none of the things we say are our original ideas.
Right.
Not one thing I have ever said on this was my idea.
Right.
It was a collection of thoughts.
You synthesize. We are synthesis machines.
Yes.
We take things from different places and then we put them against the backdrop of our own experience, and then we re-say them, in whatever way that we do. But it's all based on input that came from elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we're just going around collecting, recording the ones we like, and it goes into a bank that we then use as inspiration for the things we believe, the things we create, the things we say, the way we act, our behavior, all of it is 100% derived from the recording of an observation of other things.
Right.
So we are making that
input,
sort of mixtape. And what the kernel is saying here is that disqualifies us from being able to exercise free will. That's not free will. You took that from something else.
And instead of just owning it and being like, yeah, I took that from Snake, shut up. And which is kind of what Snake tells him in the end.
Yeah.
Is like, dude, you got to ignore these people. But instead he's really just like, oh, he really thought he was his own unique atomized individual person. And to find out he's not, is his tree was too rigid, right? The winds came and it broke it. Mm-hmm. He's breaking. He is broken now because he never thought that was even a possibility.
Yeah. So we have Raiden responding to this. That's not true. I have the right. And he gets cut off by Rose.
Rights?
Does something like a self exist inside of you? The Colonel says, that which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being. Rose, in this era of ready-made truths, self is, I love that line. In this era of ready-made truths, self is just something used to preserve those positive emotions that you occasionally feel. Colonel, another possibility is that self is a concept you conveniently borrowed under the logic that it would endow you with some sense of strength. Right, and that's crap. The Colonel, is it?
That's crap.
Would you prefer that someone else tell you that? Again, which person, from which tribe, from which ideology, if they were to tell you that, would you accept?
Right.
Right. All right, then. Explain it to him, Rose. Jack, you're simply the best, and you got here all by yourself. Remember earlier?
Which is kind of what he was, I was going to bring that up earlier. Yeah. He was saying something similar.
When Rose admitted that she curated her entire persona to be the exact kind of girl that he would be attracted to because she was sent by the Patriots to spy on him. Yeah. And they had that whole conversation at the beginning, how he was right about the Godzilla or the King Kong trivia, and she was wrong, right?
Yep.
And how that was in service to an ego-boosting power fantasy where he gets to be, and a lot of guys I feel like have this, and I'm not saying that to disparage other people. I think I'm included in this.
Sure, okay.
There's something,
how we're
maybe even like biologically that should probably, we should make an attempt to overcome. Maybe. I think there is some social conditioning in it too, for sure.
Okay.
But where well, there's memes about it all the time. They show that guy, it's like at a baseball game, and he's like this, like explaining something to a girl who's just sitting there like, whoa.
I don't care.
I don't care, right? Like this need to like explain, this need to be like a source of knowledge who like shows this poor girl like the truth of this thing we're talking about.
Sure.
To be like that sort of like root or source of knowledge.
Right.
There's something almost again, ego boosting about that, right? And so I think this is a common thing, and that Rose used that as a way to get in and get close. She possibly was saying something really dumb and wrong about King Kong
just
that she
so
knew wasn't.
Teach her.
It's the Chrysler building, so that he would be hooked to be like, no, it isn't. Let me tell you, right? What's actually right.
Right.
Again.
Oh, you were so right.
Yeah.
Let's go watch movies at your house.
So when she says this line here, where is it?
You're so special.
You're so special.
You got here all by yourself.
Got here all by yourself. Where is it? Okay. Oh,
Jack, you're simply the best, and you got there all by yourself.
yeah. I'm just trying to find it again so I can see what the next line is.
Oh, he just
Okay, here it
grumbles
is.
under his breath.
Yeah.
And he just says, "Ugh." And then the
Like,
colonel
they got
says,
me.
"Oh, what happened? Do you feel lost? Why not try a bit of soul searching?" Which leads to all the problems I've just been talking about for like the last hour. Rose, don't think you'll find anything though. Colonel, ironic that although self is something that you yourself fashioned, every time something goes wrong, you turn around and place the blame on something else.
Yes, this is true too.
Rose, it's not my fault. It's not your fault. Colonel, in denial, you simply resort to looking for another, more convenient truth in order to make yourself feel better. That is so true, even for somebody who, speaking on behalf of myself here, was locked into, no, I'm a truth seeker.
Right.
I want to know what's true, not what's convenient. Even when that is at the forefront, logically, prefrontal cortex, you're telling yourself that's what you're doing. Right. Often you're not.
And you just don't see
because
it.
maybe it doesn't feel good and you want to feel better. And
Right.
so, oh, here's an explanation. And I
Post-hoc reasoning.
just didn't do quite as much thorough research on that one as I did for all this other stuff
But
all
I
week
still
long.
could.
Because it gave me my answer. And this is a bit unconscious even.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like you just can't trust yourself as the AI is saying here. Like what they're saying is true. That's what I'm really trying to get at.
Yes, but also they are the antagonists and you should not listen to them.
It doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel right for a reason. And this is going to lead into my entire point of why Snake's speech at the end is so beautiful and why it's such a great response to this. Okay. The Colonel, should someone like that be able to decide what truth is? Rose, should someone like you even have the right to decide? Colonel, you have nothing but abuse. You have done nothing but abuse your freedom. And Rose says, you don't deserve to be free. Colonel, we're not the ones smothering the world. You are. Rose, the individual is supposed to be weak, but far from powerless. A single person has the potential to ruin the world.
See, they're putting a negative spin on this, right?
Yeah.
Because you could also say a single person can save the world. A single person has the ability to make a positive change in the world. But they aren't saying that. They're just saying a single person can ruin the world.
It's almost like
they're putting this heavy negative spin.
The speech they're giving is curated itself.
Exactly.
To make a point.
Not that they would deny it, but you know.
Were you going to say something there, Max?
No, it's just, well, that's just it. It's like, again, they were created by humans, and literally, case in what you said, a single person has the potential to ruin the world, but a single person has the ability to save it. That's literally what I say at the end of my original video on this subject.
No, really? Well, there you go.
Yeah.
But they're purposefully not letting Raiden have that single
the
positive thought.
The kernel there, right? That the context that needs to be created, they're not. They're creating a different context.
They are bad at their own job.
That is the context they want him to have.
Right. Unless their job is we're going to tear everyone down so that they're weak and listen to us all the time. Then they're doing great at their job.
Right. Colonel, and the age of digitized communication has given even more power to the individual. Too much power for an immature species. Rose, building a legacy involves figuring out what is wanted and what needs to be done for the goal. All this you used to struggle with. Now we think for you.
Isn't that great?
Colonel, we are your guardians after all. Raiden, you want to control human thought, human behavior? Colonel, of course. Anything can be quantified nowadays. That's what this exercise was designed to prove. Rose, you fell in love with me just as you were meant to, after all. Isn't that right, Jack? Colonel, Ocelot was not told the whole truth, to say the least. Rose, we rule an entire nation. Of what interest would a single soldier, no matter how able, be to us? That's not what the S3 plan was. Colonel, the S3 plan does not stand for solid snake simulation.
Right.
What it does stand for is selection, for social or for societal sanity.
Okay.
All
There
right.
you go.
That's all the reading I'm going to do for the speech, but I think
Okay.
we've made the point here.
Yeah, I think so.
I want to pass it, because I've been doing a lot of talking, a lot of reading, to what you guys want to respond for that.
I think I'm kind of don't have anything more to say there. I kind of wanted to go into what Snake was talking about now.
Okay.
So
Max, how about you?
what do you got?
Just one small thing. In regards to what he was saying about that which you call self serves as nothing more than a mask to cover your own being. What I was talking about an hour ago, about how it was this conversation which sort of broke me out of a lifelong unconscious trance. It was that. It was when I realized that, just like Raiden, I sort of had a hollowness to my own being, and what I considered myself was actually just a false persona that I was projecting. That's just straight up psychoanalysis, which I'm sure people who've watched my videos or watch any of your videos are very familiar with, but something worth highlighting.
Yeah.
But yeah, selection for societal sanity. That's the plan. And maybe we'll see something like that at some point in our future with the development of AI, but hopefully not.
Yeah.
Oh, hopefully not.
Okay. Anything on Solidus and Raiden, the battle you fight there at the end? Any of Solidus's
Just
dialogue?
He bleeds. He bleeds a lot. The killing the father's interesting. We should probably bring up Hideo Kojima. Hideo Kojima did also talk about how Arsenal gear is something like the whale in Pinocchio.
Oh, sure.
That swallows but instead of being vomited out through the mouth, of course, if you are aware of the names of the locations that you go to within Arsenal gear, you actually get pooped out through the anus. So
the
it's a
areas
different
are named after
body
like
parts.
internal organs and things like that. Yeah.
So he draws the Pinocchio reference, but I think he's saying something interesting with this. Instead of you enter into the whale and then you come out through the mouth of the whale, he's saying, no, you don't go back out the way you came. That Raiden has entered into something that you both have articulated ways that you entered into something you couldn't just come back out the way that you entered in.
Yeah.
The only way out is through. And Max, of course, and you both have had really interesting stories about how hard that is, right?
Yeah.
And how it's over a decade of difficulty, because you can't just go back out through the mouth. No. You have to go through the... Why does Kojima make me say this? I don't like that he does this. You have to exit through the exit. You can't exit through the entrance. You've got to take the back door out, because the only way out is through.
God.
And once you realize this, and this is where Raiden is at. He's lost. And this is when Snake comes in to tell him, look, you can't go back out the way you came in, but you can still get out. And it's by the only way out is through. And what's really good about that is, I mean, there's a way that this game deals with postmodern ideas, and that's basically what we've been talking about this whole time, is the philosophy of postmodernism, which is that, I don't know.
Deconstruct standards.
There you go. It's just constant deconstruction forever, right? Mm-hmm. Deconstruction, that's Jacques Derrida, and then Foucault, all about just the absence of technical truth anywhere, and the way that you can't know the truth. So therefore, okay, so what, right? Well, maybe so why not even bother, right? Or maybe so make your own truth, or maybe so. There's a lot of like ways that you can go through that. But we're talking about basically just postmodernism. But what Snake brings us to at the end is postmodernism.
Yeah.
You can't just go back to modernism from postmodernism, because postmodernism deconstructed modernism. Right? Yeah. There's a way in which modernism is just over. It's over. You can't go back. But you can get past postmodernism
beyond
as well.
Postmodernism.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is essentially what Snake's going to bring us around to, that we're going to talk about here in a minute.
So one thing that I wanted to see if you had seen this case, and if you bring up a map, I think, while you are inside of Arsenal, you get this image that is essentially the symbol of Hindu cosmology.
Yes, the turtle or the elephant on the turtle. Yes, I'm aware of this.
The snake eating its tail on the outside of it. I wondered if anybody had any notes on that.
I don't, other than it's interesting. The idea that it's an elephant on a turtle, and then where you have the battle would be on top of the elephant, right?
Yeah.
I guess to answer Max's question from like 3 hours ago at this point, where does that battle take place? You're on the top of the elephant, right?
Yeah.
And this is the idea of Hindu cosmology. Anyways, there's a connection to the concept of turtles all the way down too, because then the question is asked, well, what's the turtle standing on? Oh, it's standing on another turtle, right? Okay, well, what is that on? Oh, well, look, it's just turtles all the way down. This is a famous thing from a long time ago. But the idea is that we're on the top of it, right? We're on the top of this structure, and we're having to kill our father on the top of the elephant that is on top of the turtle. There's almost like a ridiculous aspect of this that Kojima just loves. But I didn't really take many notes on that, other than to say that, yeah, that is a thing. And it's Hindu and it's cool. Yeah. But if I knew way more about Hinduism than I do, I'd probably have a little bit more to say about it.
How about you, Max? Have you ever...
So the artwork, I'm just reading this from my notes. It comes from a book from 1822 by a guy named Nicholas Müller, and the book is called Glauben, Wesen und Kunst der alten Hindus, beliefs, and that translates to beliefs, knowledge, and art of the ancient Hindus.
I love that.
The image depicts a turtle bearing the 21 worlds of Hindu mythology on its back, surrounded by the world serpent, Shesha, one of the primal beings of creation.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, maybe it's just another symbol of, like, all the different, realities sort of coming together and converging.
Yes.
One other thing I'll mention on top of that, though, just going back to, going out the backside of the whale, if you look at the pause menu when you're going through Arsenal gear, it'll depict the names of the different areas, reference different parts of the human digestive system, and the closer that Raiden gets to true realization, higher consciousness, is it corresponds to where he is. So when he hears that it's what S3, it's like a solid snake simulation.
Right.
He's in the rectum, and then after that, when he's out, that's when he has that conversation with the AI. So that's when he reaches peak consciousness. So just further validating that interpretation.
Yeah. That's wonderful. Also, just the idea of an Ouroboros does represent a closed system.
Yes.
So in essence, if there is an Ouroboros here at all, it is something that needs to be stepped out of. It is the chessboard, right?
Yes.
And to step off the chessboard is to exit the cycle of the Ouroboros, the circle.
Yeah.
So that may also be what's happening here as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you'll indulge me as the resident alchemist, it's also the symbol for the beginning and end of the alchemical project.
Yeah.
It represents both the first ingredient of the alchemical process, which is the prima materia, and also the end, which is the philosopher's stone, which is also analogous to higher consciousness, which is what Raiden achieves theoretically.
Okay, very interesting. So you might not say that he necessarily needs to break out of it.
Well, no, I'm saying once you achieve that end process, you effectively do break out of it.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. They're one and the same. The only way out is through. That's what we have said many times.
Well, it's a union of opposites. It's like, you're within it, but you're also out of it. Sort of like the Buddha when he achieves nirvana. He can move between ultimate reality and our actual reality. So is he there? Is he not there? Yeah, that whole thing.
Very good.
All right. My next note is on the snake speech. So I guess we should just say, Raiden
kills his meme dad.
Defeats his meme father.
His meme dad. The meme killed the gene. The meme dad killed the gene dad. Then the son killed the meme dad to get back.
And he falls onto the statue there. And then Raiden finds himself kind of in the middle of the city as like first responders or, arriving on the scene of this.
Is that what they were? They look
crash.
like just normal people.
Well, so there are normal people walking around, but there are police officers and stuff kind of rushing toward the federal hall building.
The ones that struck me the most were just the regular dudes who are just like, it's a
just
normal day.
Walking around as if nothing happened. Again, another possible suggestion that this is not real. But
everyone's ignorant.
I'm going to stop saying that.
But once again, this goes back to Hindu like theology almost, which is that there are the enlightened ones who are in an ocean of the ignorant, right? There are all the ignorant masses around you, and then the enlightened ones. And so the fact that something huge just happened and everyone's ignoring it is actually central to a big concept behind Hindu cosmology in general. In fact, the Nataraja, the dance that we talked about, because this was in Xenosaga, the dance that is performed by Shiva is one that is done on the top of like a dwarf, and the dwarf represents all the ignorant people, right? And then Shiva is dancing the Nataraja dance, surrounded by fire, in an Ouroboros type symbol as well, like on top of them. But the idea here is that Raiden is having this deep moment, and then all the chuds are still just like they're just doing their ignorant
just
thing,
have no
and,
idea what's going on.
just going to work, participating in the rat race of life, and then here Raiden is enlightened, but no one can tell, no one knows.
So here's the thrust of what I took away from Snake's dialogue at the end that I really liked. And it applies to many things. I wrote Snake's line about not taking the details seriously. It's the meaning you find in it that matters. Don't take Metal Gear's plot details too seriously.
Ooh, good.
It's B-movie action slop that is meant to feel grandiose and confusing. What really matters is the central message.
This is a good read. I like this.
Essentially, you have, well, and I don't want to say this to like dismiss people who think Metal Gear's plot is confusing to its detriment, or that it is silly to undermine itself in certain ways.
Yeah.
Like I was responding with this as my own sort of takeaway from all that, and why essentially I end up loving it despite its wackiness.
Some B movies are
stuff
fun.
like that.
They're really good.
Yeah, like, and also,
How dare you call my all-time favorite game a B movie, Mike? Jesus.
Oh, geez.
but also the other
In
way
my
around.
presence. No, go ahead.
The other way around too. Not only is it like you for people who are like taking it super seriously and diving into like all the details and all the lore and like trying to piece together this elaborate puzzle, but the other way around too, right? Like the people who kind of dismiss a lot of what it's trying to say because this is like elementary in its exploration of these concepts, or this is profound to a teenager maybe, but like if you've just never heard this stuff, there's elitists kind of on both sides of this.
I see what you
in
mean.
the critique of it, or in pronouncing it as the greatest thing ever. And I'm not trying to disparage either person from wherever you sit. I'm only giving sort of like where I landed on this. And that is that I think what is special about Metal Gear is that it creates this illusion of complexity, not because the complexity is the point, but because the emotion you feel from that is the point. You're meant to be confused. You're not meant to put all the pieces together and have them all fit exactly right. Because they're not constructed that way on purpose.
Because we're dealing with postmodernism here, right?
Yes.
Like the foundations are all dissolved. There is no rock to hold on to right now.
Yes.
And you rejoice in the chaos.
Yes. And so it's meant to not fit.
Yeah.
It's not supposed to make sense. You're supposed to be right in here, who is not going to like go research this all and put it all together afterwards and like, I've got it. I understand that the conspiracy is all laid out before me.
And you know what? He would get such a kick out of explaining that whole conspiracy to Rose as just a great listener.
He just can feel, he can intuit, Solidus is wrong.
No, right.
GW is wrong.
Yes.
What this AI is telling me is wrong. I just know it. I don't care how complex and well thought out their argument is. I just know it's wrong.
There you go. Just like you just know you have a soul, or there's a part of you that isn't just input. I don't know how big it is. I don't know how much it is. But there's something that makes you that is separate from everything around you.
Yeah.
And you can't explain it. You can't like put words to it. Nobody's been able to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe Jung is the closest.
You'll drive yourself crazy in the attempt.
Just know that you have an intuition and be good with that. It's more like right-brained thinking if we go back to Ian McGilchrist stuff.
So what really matters here is the central message. No one quite knows who or what they are.
Yeah.
The memories you have and the role you were assigned are burdens you had to carry. It doesn't matter if they were real or not. That's never the point. So sitting here arguing about whether or not Metal Gear Solid 2 was a simulation or not is missing the point.
I like this.
Whether you fall on,
good.
yes, it was all in a VR simulation, or no, it was actually real, you're missing the point if that's what you're focusing on so much.
I would almost extend that to people who think that the entire world is a simulation as well.
Yeah.
It's like you're just kicking down the road.
Maybe it is.
And really missing
But
the
it
point.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. That's not the point.
Right. It's real to you. It's real.
That's never the point. There's no such thing in the world as absolute reality. As I was for 15 plus years driving myself insane,
That
trying
you're
to
gonna
find what the truth is.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as absolute truth. Most of what they call real, most of what they call truth, is actually fiction. What you think you see is only as real as your brain tells you it is. Then what am I supposed to believe in?
Right.
What am I going to leave behind when I'm through? We can tell other people about having faith, what we had faith in, what we found important enough to fight for. It's not whether you are right or wrong, but how much faith you are willing to have that decides the future.
Yeah, that's 100% true. I mentioned before, trust.
Yeah, you
Trust and faith.
can't really know. That is one of the hardest truths I have ever had to accept.
Yeah.
And it was only in accepting that finally that I started to have some peace in regards to this. I let go of something. I accepted something that I did not want to accept for a long, long time.
It's like it put you on the path towards
I'm never
wisdom.
going to have it. Whatever truth is, I'm never going to have it. I will never get it. And I
But
will
does
always...
that mean you stop?
Yeah, does that mean you stop
Looking
pursuing
or
it?
striving?
Does that mean
No, I
you
don't
stop
think so.
living your life as if it is out there and that
Right.
you pursue it? It was kind of
Well,
like
the intuition is that it's there. Just
the debate about does free will exist, which I
Right.
think applies to this too. We talked about this in Planescape Torment.
the answer is ignore everyone who tells
So-
you that and live your life.
So it may not,
Right.
but you should probably still live as if it does,
Right. Of
to
course.
not drive yourself totally insane.
And those around you.
And
Yeah.
to live a fulfilling life,
Right.
and to have some measure of peace within it. So you should live in pursuit as much as you are capable of truth. But you must also accept the reality that you'll never have it, and be humble enough to admit that you don't.
Sure. Yes. That's actually
In
a big
order
one.
to create flexibility enough in your life to adjust when crazy things that you can't account for happen.
Which they will.
And you will be able to adapt to those changing situations rather than be so pigeonholed into one thing that you think is the absolute truth that when it is inevitably revealed to you that what you believe has a lot of elements of either intentional lies or just things that are clearly not true, it won't totally destroy you,
Right.
and you're totally incapable of adapting at that point.
Right.
And you break and just die off.
And then you shut off all communications with everything because all of them have this foundation that can be deconstructed.
Right.
Yeah.
And so there has to be a level, I think, this is my personal philosophy now in the place I'm at in life, of flexibility and humility.
Yes.
I do not know everything.
Very good.
The fact that I don't know everything means I've got to be ready to
flexible.
change when the thing I think is true is shown not to be true. I have to be willing to then have the humility to say, I was wrong. And I'm coming off of that now. I'm not going to go down with the ship on this. Just in my sense of pride, to give the illusion to others, a status for myself that I was right.
Interesting.
And I planned for everything, and I was the one you should have been looking to curate the information.
Right.
Don't
That's ego.
be that person.
Right.
Don't let yourself get to the point where you are on that sinking ship and you didn't account for everything, and you have to admit as you're sinking and drowning that
Maybe this
you
wasn't
weren't right about everything
Right.
all the time. That's essentially what I took away from Metal Gear Solid 2.
Well, what I love about Snake's response there, because if I could have thought of a way that after the villain gives the speech of you're just a pawn, you don't have free will, you're weak and always will be weak, all of which is like possibly may be true in some way. Some of it's certainly true. The free will thing, possibly true. Doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter. Anybody who's really wrestling over that question, you might need to be told this. It doesn't actually matter. It will not, whether or not you know whether or not free will is technically possible or not, will not affect your life except in negative ways. Don't, like, unless you're a high-level scientist, like studying like neurological stuff, this isn't worth your time. Don't bother with this. And that's more or less what Snake is saying. If I were to think that a game that laid out such a good intellectual argument against its own existence, right, and the whole character that you've been playing up to this point, and then the person afterwards who steps in is refuting that thing by saying that the solution to all of this is that you just need to have faith, I don't think, I didn't expect this at all, because this actually echoes the brothers Karamazov in Dostoevsky. I think it was the brother Ivan lays out a case against Alyosha for how there is no meaning in the world and that everything is completely devoid of all of that. And Ivan
wins the argument.
And do you what Ivan does after what Alyosha does after Ivan lays out that argument is he reaches forward and gives him a hug. And then he gives him a kiss. And then Ivan is basically dumbfounded because he was expecting an intellectual argument back, right? You got to prove that there's any purpose in life to justify all of this suffering. And he does a very good job along the lines of Nietzsche in pointing out just what that suffering is and how bad it is. And the response from Alyosha, and this is Brothers Karamazov is considered like the best book ever written by a lot of people, is his response is love. And then he just gives his brother a hug and a kiss. And then that basically is his counter argument. It's an experiential way of living. It's a way of living life full of meaning. And Alyosha wasn't as smart as Ivan, yet here he is, like showing true empathy. Is it empathy or sympathy? I get those two confused all the time.
Well, I think you could say empathy. Yeah.
Showing love. And I guess empathy, because everyone suffers in life, right? Yeah. And just telling him that he loves him. If I were to lay out this entire case that the Colonel and Rose, that the AI gives to Raiden, if I were to lay out that exact argument to my 7-year-old daughter, do you know what she would probably tell me if I told her what's the solution to this problem? She would probably tell me that I have to have faith.
Yeah.
Now, we go to church as a family. Like that's part of her upbringing. It's what she's been taught. I know that. But when Snake shows up and gives Raiden the answer that my daughter would give me to this same exact problem, that is powerful and it's profound. And it kind of shows you that there's a whole separate side of life that you're all missing out on because of your over-intellectualizing everything. And if you can't explain and account for it, and you literally don't have free will unless you can prove that you have free will. No, because I'm going to go choose to do stuff right now and you can't stop me, right? And I'm going to go and I'm going to decide what I do next, right? And it's like there's no amount of intellectual argument back, but there's an embodied way of living that when done properly can refute that argument just by being, right? Just by believing, just by trusting people, despite all the reasons not to trust the people around you, right? Despite how many times you've been betrayed by your neighbors or even maybe some of your friends who, you know, maybe you've forgiven and they're back now, but they really wronged you that one time, right? Yet you're still going to extend grace and offer trust back to that person again, because what else are you going to do? Are you going to stop trusting everybody? Everybody's going to do something that you're going to consider to be a horrible wrong against you at some point, right? Given enough time. Or are you going to say, against all evidence, I will still just have trust in those around me, and I will still have trust in something. And Snake doesn't say what it is. Sorry.
Yeah.
Snake doesn't say what it is. He says, find it. It's out there, though. There's something. Go find it and fight for it and believe in it and have faith in it, because faith is the only answer to all of this. It's the only way that you get through any of this.
Yeah.
And even if the first thing that you choose is wrong,
that's
you have to have the will and the courage to start again.
Sure.
Because you do have that power within you, as Raiden so clearly demonstrates at the very end of that conversation.
Yeah. And that kind of comes back to my central point too, is what it's really about is just having the flexibility and the humility to take responsibility and to be accountable.
Oh, yeah.
And to admit when you are wrong and change course and adapt. And this is not only something that I think each and every one of us needs to embody more and more all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
And something that's really hard to embody because for some reason in our society, we've made it out to be that we have to put out this illusion that
of
confidence, of this facade
that's true.
No, like a true leader or a person who's really got themselves together, they're never wrong.
Right. And they never ask questions. They never question.
Yeah, right. And who do you follow too? Like take account of that. Who do you follow and how often do they take criticism? How often are they accountable for the things that they do wrong? How willing are they to admit this? Or do they always blame someone else? Do they always have an excuse? Do they always have some way of working out to where, nope, I was right and some other person was wrong and it was their fault? This attitude is one which will lead you to being the kind of person who thinks you can curate and decide for everyone else.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, and that's the type of person who will be a disaster for the society.
They are the least ones you would want to do it.
Because they are the ones who think they have it all figured out and cannot adapt when the thing they didn't account for shows up.
This is good. That's a very good point.
A person who is able to do that, who has the humility to admit to wrongdoing, to be accountable, to accept criticism, is the exact person who will be able to adapt to the changing circumstance that would otherwise ruin the society.
Yet also will not want to do it.
Yes, and because they don't feel qualified.
Right.
Because they know how fallible they are.
They know that they know nothing.
And yet
they
are the most qualified exactly for that reason.
Yeah. They just keep qualifying themselves more. The more they say no, the more that we have to push them.
And so I guess where I have landed in my life, the thing that I choose to believe, the thing that I choose to pass on in the form of this podcast is look for that person. Look for that person who is not looking to be in a position where they can curate and choose and lead. Because that's the guy you want to follow. That's the gal you want to follow when things really start going crazy, because they will be open and adaptable and flexible and have the ability to survive when the environment changes. The other person is a specialist at the environment they've created for themselves. But when that environment changes and inevitably goes wrong, their ego, their pride won't allow them to adapt, because that would be admitting to fault, admitting
and
to
you can
being
never
wrong.
do that.
And I can never do that, so they will sink with their ship.
When your social media history is recorded for everything you've said since you were 15, and nope, he changed. That means that he used to be this, or maybe he still secretly is this, or that he admitted that he was wrong. It's a thing that people are going to use.
He doesn't have
to
a
bring
perfect
up over
record
and over.
of being right. Can't be trusted. We've constructed this total falsehood that is a requisite for leadership.
Yes,
and it's the opposite is true.
The opposite is true, as Tolkien said. Yeah. Not 1 in 1,000 men is fit for telling another person what to do, least of all those who seek the opportunity.
Yeah. So
maybe said 1 in a million.
Max,
you got something?
I'll pass it to you for the final word here. Anything you'd like to say?
Yes, I think it's important to point out one of the final shots of the game, which is when Raiden essentially chooses to live his own life for himself without the direction of the AI or whatever outside influence. And the last sort of thing that he does to remove that influence, the last piece of influence that he removes, oddly enough, in a way that kind of breaks the fourth wall, is that of the players. Now, if you guys recall, towards the beginning of the Planet chapter, when you first interact with the node, and you input your name or whatever name you put in there, that is essentially how you refer to yourself. Yeah. It actually shows up on the dog tags that Raiden takes
carries
off of his neck.
And he's like, I don't know who this is.
Right. And then
great.
Snake asks, who is that? And he's like, nobody I've ever heard before. And he says, I'll pick my own name and my own life, and I will find something worth passing on. And then he throws the dog tags into the crowd. Essentially, that's him breaking off from his mimetic heritage in the same way that in Metal Gear Solid 1, Solid Snake broke free from his genetic heritage. Although I will say the scene was kind of ruined for me because the first time that I played this scene and I put in my name, my name was Dank Sinatra, and I originated from Jamaica.
Oh, geez, man.
Yeah,
well,
loses its power a little bit. That's like people who like name in their character in Zelda or maybe in Final Fantasy VII something really stupid or dumb or silly, and then like you have that scene where I won't tell the scene, but like they say the name and it just like ruins the impact of the whole thing. I've seen that happen a lot for people.
Oh, it's so fun.
Anyway, thank you everybody for watching this series.
Also, the Patriots have died 100 years ago, and who knows? And maybe they're still alive. Okay, now Metal Gear Solid is over.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Post-credits.
The post-credits is like these people have apparently been dead for 100 years.
100 years.
And again, another mystery that Hideo Kojima himself never had any plans on actually answering, because that's not what was important. But anyway.
Oh, great.
Can you imagine if he didn't have any plans after that? Like he just, it's like, oh yeah, they've actually been dead for 100 years. Here you go, writers. Try to sort that one out, along with all this other convoluted stuff that we set up in the game.
Which also,
that's such a troll.
Which is just not the point.
Because
as long as the point gets delivered properly, which it did in this game, especially at the very end with Snake.
Yeah.
The fact that there's so many puzzle pieces that are just like missing from this puzzle.
Left unsolved.
It's not important because the puzzle was only a vehicle to get you to this realization, to this spot, to postmodernism, where all foundations are dissolved, yet here I am building something, doing the best I can anyways, instead of further breaking everything around me.
This elucidates exactly why this is not a lore podcast.
Exactly.
This is exactly why we are not concerned with summarizing every piece of the plot and talking about every piece of its lore and connecting every puzzle piece and all the dots together. Because
we don't
in my opinion, as is Snake's opinion, that part doesn't matter.
Right. This is the more worthwhile. This is the meat right here.
It's not to say it's not fun or that it might not be a worthwhile thing to do if you're into that.
Well, we've done it many times. Like, ask Mike anything about Lord of the Rings.
Sure.
He knows that stuff back and forward. Like, we get into lore sometimes, but it's not
that it's not fun or worthwhile in whatever context, but it's not the point of this story.
Exactly.
As said by the man himself at the very end. Yeah. And so that's why we're focused on what we focus on. Anyway, if those of you who are still watching at this point appreciate what we do and think that these kinds of conversations are valuable, please, we invite you to support the show, to visit our Patreon page, or if not that, through YouTube membership or Subscribestar. These links are in the description. This takes a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot more than people realize. As I was talking at the beginning, the reason we didn't do the skit again multiple times is because the time is not there. And so if you want to see the show continue, if you want to see it improve, and if you want to see it get to a place where we can create the kind of time to do those sorts of things, please support the show and make that a possibility. We invite you to do that if this is something that you have found valuable. And thank you, Max, for coming on to the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. This has been awesome, guys.
Yeah, and every time you've been on, it's just been a great conversation. I'm sure we'll do it again, collaborate in the future. So thank you, and thank you to everyone watching. We will see you again real soon. Peace out.
Peace out.